You are listening to the Knightline Sports Network, brought to you by Travis Dever and the Dever team, 386-690-1636.
Knightline is brought to you by the Dever team, your source for New Smyrna Beach real estate and everything else New Smyrna Beach. Go to www.thedeverteam.com and call UCF alumni Travis Dever for all your New Smyrna Beach needs. 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636.
Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
All right, hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios, and this is episode 250, if you believe that, because I can't. Episode 250 of the Knightline podcast from the award-winning Knightline Sports Network, by the way. Glad to have you all here, and joining me as always,
Roger Phipps. And on this week's show, we're looking back and looking forward. The football coaching picture becomes clear. We're filling out a staff. We're talking football with Kyle Israel. Ben Stout goes inside the paint. We have the Tijuana Flats hot take of the week and your questions on Ask Knightline.
All righty, well, that's it. We got. It's been a crazy week. This has been one of probably the more crazy weeks of the 250 shows that I've done. Of this.
I can only imagine.
There's been a couple other pretty crazy weeks, but this is probably one of the most memorable, crazy, never thought this would happen kind of a week.
I mean, last week we had breaking news while we were on the show trying to get this all sorted out. This week, though, Andrew, I kind of want to take a step back in honor of the 250 episodes that you've put together for all of us to enjoy. I kind of wanted to start the show by asking you a few questions about your journey.
And 99% of the people just turned it off. No. Who knows?
Well, I promise we'll get into Gus and a bunch of other things tonight. That's part of the looking forward part. But I did want to kind of recognize that and share a little bit of that with the fans, because I think it's important. I mean, we do this show week in and week out, and I haven't done it as long as you have, obviously, by a large margin. And there's a lot of work and passion and money and a lot of things that come together to build this thing for everyone and provide this listening experience. But I think it's important for people to know, this was UCF's first podcast. It and that'll never change. This was the very first podcast that was an exclusively UCF podcast. And I want to recognize that. And I really kind of want to understand your journey. So, what brought you, let's start off by what brought you to creating this podcast and bringing it to the rest of us. What was that journey like?
I've told this story quite a bit, but I'll tell it one more time. I met who is now my wife, and I moved to Orlando in 2009, and I met her in 2010, and she took me to a UCF football game in 2010. It was a game against Rice, I remember. And I absolutely 100% fell in love with UCF. I didn't even know UCF existed, to be honest with you. I had no clue. I didn't know about that it was where Dante Culpepper, Asante Samuel, all those people came from. I had no idea. In fact, when she said, do you want to go to a football game? I'm like, yeah, like some small college or something? And she's like, no, UCF. It's the school that I graduated from. I'm like, oh, okay. What do they play? Like Division III or something? like literally, I said that. And she's like, I don't know. I think that they play like the normal, division football, with all the other teams. I'm like, oh, okay. So I went. I'd never seen the campus before, never been to the stadium, literally did not even know UCF existed. So I went, and I was just like, I was blown away. The campus is much different, obviously, than the campus that I went to college on. It being, fairly new compared to the. I went to Kansas, if you don't know, and we have a very old campus. It's hilly and got a lot of trees, and this was just completely different. But I loved the way that it was laid out, and loved the football stadium, and had a great time. And I thought, the football team, the game was good, and all that. And I totally fell in love. I'm like, okay, I've got a new team. I can watch UCF now. So I went searching for more information, and I found Brandon Helwig's UCF Sports, but there wasn't a lot more besides that. I couldn't find as much stuff on ESPN and all that because they weren't really being talked about at that point very much. So I decided, if I can't find more information about this, if I'm having trouble finding more information about it, then other people are having trouble finding more information. So I've always been a musician, always had microphones and mixing boards and recording software and all that stuff. And I had a friend at the time when we started the podcast. I hadn't met him yet in 2010, but Troy, that started the show with me, he was a huge UCF fan, went to UCF, the whole deal, and just started talking. We talked a lot about it at work. And I was like, man, you know what? We should start a podcast because, podcasts are like a cool thing now. And so I started a podcast, and I was like, I wanted people to find more information about UCF. And I hope that I have provided people with an avenue to find more information about UCF. So that's what my goal was, and I think that we've done a pretty good job. Have we done everything perfectly? No. Will we do everything perfect going forward? No. But I feel fairly successful at trying to do what I wanted to do. I never expected it to go this far. I literally thought maybe if we did 10 episodes during football season, or maybe 5 episodes during football season, it would go there. I never expected this, ever. So it's a shock. Every episode that we do is a shock to me, to be honest with you.
Let me ask you this. So kind of thinking back on that journey, if you had to name 2 or 3 things that were highlights, because we really are talking about going back to 2015-ish, maybe a little earlier.
2014.
Yeah,
July,
2014.
June or July, I think 6, whatever 6, is that July?
June.
6, so June of 2014 is when we started.
So thinking about that time, if you could name 2 or 3 highlights for you with your experience with the podcast, what would they be?
Well, I mean, as far as guests, I would think having our first UCF player on was probably a big deal. And I'm not quite sure. I'd have to go all the way back and look. But it was either... It was probably Kyle Israel, but then a more recent player, it would, as far as that timeline goes, it would probably be Quincy McDuffie was one of the first ones that I had, and then highlights probably would be like Phil Steele, Dennis Dodd, and a lot of the players, because I used to do the player interviews, like Mackenzie, obviously. Daryl Mack, a lot of players before they came to UCF. I remember the one with, God, I can't remember his name, which is horrible. I just remember some of them being funny and have Adrian Killens. I'm sorry. That was who I was trying to think of. Adrian Killens' interview, I'll never forget because it was funny. He was cracking me up the entire time. I had a blast during that interview, probably one of my favorites. And then, getting to have guys like Brandon Alexander on after he won the Gray Bowl. in Canada. That's Canada's version of the Super Bowl. Stuff like that are memories for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I know I've been lucky enough to experience most of them because I've interacted with the show in some form or fashion. I've listened to every single one since you guys started with Troy.
I apologize.
So, it's been an interesting transition because I participated in different parts of the show. One of the things people may not remember is that for a while, you were also doing a post-game show, which one of the sacrifices that went along with that post-game show was sometimes you had to miss endings of games, and that was difficult. But that's another way that you were connecting with folks. And I seem to remember a couple of videos that you were doing when recruiting was going on.
Yeah.
I remember that as well.
Yeah, I kind of got away from that because if you talk about work, that was a lot of work. And maybe we'll go back and I've been recently thinking about doing something like that again, where I had people come over and we all sat around and talked and stuff. And I remember one of the last times I did it, I bought these new lights that were battery operated when we were doing video. And as the show went on, because it was like a 2-hour thing, the lights got dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. So now, yes, I've bought lights that are, electrical powered instead of battery powered. So the first one I think Trace and I did in my garage.
You did.
It was the signing day special thing. And I like to do things that other people haven't done. And that was like, nobody had ever done that before. A UCF thing live on YouTube. I don't believe. And like a set show, like a little thing. I don't think anybody had ever done that. So I like to do things first. So it's just kind of one of the ways that I think about doing stuff. And I know there had been a post-game show before, but I don't know if it was done the way that I did it with callers and all that stuff. And it racked my brain for a long time. I mean, I'm pretty technical. I've toured with bands and stuff for years and years before doing what I do now. And, I'm pretty well versed on, technical stuff. So I've always been able to do that. But that really racked my brain. How am I going to do this live from Burger U or wherever I'm going to do this show? How am I going to do it live and have a good connection and have internet service and have a phone there? So I drove people a little crazy with a couple of these devices that I was using, the technical support, especially when I was doing the VoIP phone. And I can't remember anything today. My brain is a little fried.
It's all 250 episodes.
Yeah,
I'm just now
the
sinking
VoIP
in.
company though, the big one. What is it?
Vonage?
Vonage. Yes, I drove the people crazy at Vonage because nobody had ever done what I was trying to do, and they're like, "Oh, it won't work. It won't work." And I'm like, "No, it's going to work." I need you guys to give me this information, though, so I can make it work. I needed to know, different rates of what needed to go up and what needed to go down and how much internet speed. And can I do it with a 4G modem at that time, I think. And I had to find a modem that I could use as a cell phone with a SD card in it. Or not an SD card, but with one of the little... I can't remember anything today. But anyway, just all kinds of stuff. And I figured all that out. And, the quality of the content wasn't probably the greatest a lot of times. There was, part of going to the game is tailgating and alcohol and stuff like that. And I know a few times that I did those, I was completely lit. So, but we had fun with it. It was fun. It was kind of a pain in the ass, though, to be honest with you. Especially at Burger U, to go and I dropped my equipment off like way before, people were there, even pre-gaming, and I would have to lug all this gear around and then worry about it, where it was, and if people were setting drinks on it and all that stuff. And they would never actually give me a table that I could guarantee that I would have when I got there to set everything up. Because there'd be a bunch of people in there if I didn't get there way early, so I'd leave during the third quarter. And literally, I've paid a couple people to get out of the freaking table that I wanted. I would literally hand him $20 and be like, "Hey, I need this table. Move over there." So,
wow.
yeah, I mean, so that was all part of it. And then, you mentioned leaving games early. I left that. I had to leave that Cows UCF game that Mike Hughes ran. I didn't get to see Mike Hughes run back that kickoff. Like, I missed it completely, and I literally was almost. I'm an emotional person. I was literally almost crying when I heard it happen, and that was one of the big reasons why I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore, and I didn't do it much longer after that because I was missing stuff like that, and I don't know. I don't know how many people really listened to that. I know some did, and people definitely called and all that stuff. I know that people listened to it when I put it out afterwards. I don't know how many people were actually listening live. So if you were, I appreciate it. But, and that's how the radio show kind of came up as well, because what my plan was to do a post-game show after the game on ESPN 580. And UCF, Mark Daniels, didn't want that to happen at all. And literally, I was given a cease and desist letter or order from UCF's and I guess the radio station that Mark Daniels works for, lawyers, sent a cease and desist saying that I could not broadcast live at all from the campus of UCF. So then I was going to go to the church parking lot and do it from there, and it just turned into a big deal, and they're like, you know what, look, just because, WDBO and ESPN all had to be involved in that as well, and they basically were like, look, we'll give you an hour a week or whatever if you want to do this, so I started doing it on Sunday mornings. So that's kind of where that turned out, but the plan was that year to do a post-game show opposite of Mark Daniels' show with callers, because he doesn't take any callers. So that was the big thing for me, is I wanted to do it opposite him. Yes, like in competition with him, and they didn't want that. So it turned into, it was Knightline the morning after, and now it's Knightline at night. So that's kind of that story.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you going through that, and it was definitely difficult with all of the logistics and both. And
well, I had made like 4 different plans. Like, first of all, I didn't want to do it at Burger U. Then I was going to do it from the tailgate, and we planned all the stuff and how we would do it at a tailgate. And then I couldn't do it on the campus, so I got the permission of the church and all that to do that across the street. And then the letters kept coming from the lawyers, and finally I was just like, whatever. I can't compete with that, so we'll just do it on the radio. We'll do it some other way, and it's turned into Knightline at night now, which I really enjoy doing the Tuesday night show. I wish more people would call. I will say that. We are a call-in show, and we get maybe one call every show. So if you're listening, I hope you're still listening at this point, call us. We want to talk to you. That's what it's for. That's why I do a call-in show. Nobody else will do a call-in show, and I will. So call us, please. That's my plead through all this.
Well, kind of talking through that, it makes me think about all of the time and effort that goes into this thing, right? So if you kind of want to, tell everybody, or not necessarily tell everybody, but just kind of give a window into how much time it takes for you to produce a show, whether it be the radio show or the podcast, and how much time it takes for you to produce the content.
Well, all of this put together, and now we're the Knightline Sports Network, so we have other shows and all that. If you put research and reading and looking stats up and all the different, I actually watch film, believe it or not. I watch, games over again. to be able to look at this, and I'll rewind and, go back and forth. I wish I had one of those little things like the teams have where you could watch it, frame by frame and reverse and all that and get different camera angles. That would be awesome. But it's with all of it, it's like a 40-hour-a-week job. It is. I do a lot of research and reading more than anything else. And looking at message boards and looking at Facebook and looking at what people are saying on Twitter and trying to post all that stuff on all those things. And then we don't do as many interviews as we used to, which I'd like to get back into. I'll say that. I kind of got away from that just because honestly, I was a little tired of doing it. And all the work that took to get people lined up, phone calls, emails, text messages, all that stuff just becomes a lot. So I'd say it's kind of like a 40-hour-a-week job, but it's probably more than that, to be honest with you. So besides my regular 40-hour-a-week job, I do this as well. And I do some other things, photography, if anybody remembers when I ran a really horrible photography commercial on here for myself. So I do that. I do some voiceover stuff. I do some music stuff. So I've got a lot going on. And yeah.
And you participate on other shows too. I heard you, I think it was this last week you were on there.
Yeah. Sometimes on Jerry's show and some other podcasts and stuff we've been doing, for a long time, being guests. That's part of it. If you're going to have guests on your show, then they're going to ask you to be a guest on their show, and you kind of have to do that. And I get people sending me emails and text messages and talking to me on Twitter and all that stuff. And I try to engage people. I'm not the greatest at it. But I try. So if I've not responded to you at some point, I was probably doing something. It wasn't personal. So, yeah.
Okay. So kind of looking forward now, what do you envision what do you see for UCF football and then also for the podcast? Because we've kind of grown with the program, right? So what do you see now moving forward? Especially now the momentum that we're getting, where do you see UCF in 5 years? Where do you see the pod in 5 years?
Wow. Well, I think I'll be lucky if the podcast is around in 5 years. Doing it as long as I have, there's always the time after football season where everything kind of slows down. And at the end of football season, I've said on here a bunch of times, I'm freaking burnt out big time after that. And it just with what we were just saying and all the time that it takes and all that stuff, I honestly, every year I tell myself that I'm not going to do this anymore. I tell myself, I try to talk myself out of it, and then I kind of feel obligated in a way because of the people that listen and the people that support us. So those people, if you're listening to this, you're the reason I do this. It's not all because it's fun. I do this because you listen, and I see when I look at the stats how many people listen. And that's why I continue doing this. Back to your question, though. Sorry, it was just a rant. I needed to say that. So UCF obviously is, I think it's incredibly exciting, the rise of UCF, especially now with Gus Malzahn. Not probably the guy that I wanted. I would have rather had Jeff Lebby, but then again, how can you pass up Gus Malzahn? So he has more Twitter followers than UCF football does. And you know how big of a deal that was to get that many Twitter followers after like 2017 and the great job that UCF does on Twitter and all that stuff. But to have a coach, a single person in your system now that has that many Twitter followers, just using that as a measuring stick, that's a big deal. Heupel, Scott Frost, none of the George O'Leary didn't even have a Twitter, but that's a big deal.
I don't even think he had a
UCF.
MySpace.
I doubt that he even has email. I don't know. Probably has a flip phone. But anyway, it's a really big deal for UCF. So I just think the notoriety and the eyes that are on UCF will just continue to go up, especially now. This year, I think we're going to get better coverage than we've had in a long time, especially with the Blue Bloods, because Gus is here. I think that will really, really help. He's already been on a lot of the shows and stuff like that. He was on Feinbaum the other day as the UCF head coach. I don't know if any other UCF head coaches have been on Feinbaum. So that's a pretty big deal if you know who that guy is. Not a big
Paul
fan,
Feinbaum.
Yeah, but that's a big deal, and I can't wait to see what happens with the Gus Malzahn thing. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think that it's going to be. It's hard to predict how it's going to be in 5 years. And how anything is going to be in 5 years, because especially with this last year that we've seen, there's a lot of things that are a lot of different. So I think that a lot more eyes will be on UCF, though. And hopefully we can get some of those eyes onto Knightline as well. I see us continuing. I see us doing it. We may change some things up a little bit. We have possibly something in the plans that's going to make it a little bit different. But different is not always bad. I may run a Twitter poll here soon. So if you're listening to this, look out for that Twitter poll, because I might be asking a question of a direction change a little bit. So nothing big, just a little bit different. So anyway, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it's great. And I think
I'm rambling. I'm sorry.
No, you're not. You're talking about something that you're very passionate about, number one. And number two, folks, take advantage of it. I mean, just like I was a listener, just like everybody else, right? And I got more involved in the show, and now I have the privilege of helping Andrew bring this message to you. You guys...
Sounds like church.
Yeah.
Your message for today.
Your message for today. All right. I'm not going to ask you to stand up and sing with me, but what I will ask you to do is to participate in those things, because it is important for us. We are trying to make a show that you enjoy. So when you have opportunities to have input, we really are seeking those. So make sure that you're availing yourself of that, because it's important to Andrew and I that we provide the best product that we can to you. So
absolutely. The biggest thing, like I said earlier, I want people to call on that Tuesday night show. I know it's Tuesday night at 9:00. A lot of people are putting their kids to bed and all that stuff. And who knows who listens to the radio at 9:00 on a Tuesday night, but it's available. And I've thought that was the best night to do it if I had to pick a night, because it wasn't Monday Night Football and all that stuff. So please, please, please call us. I want to have interaction with you guys, and you guys ask us questions or state your opinion. It's not just asking us questions. I want your opinion on things. So please interact with us on that. I would really appreciate it.
Okay. And I think you kind of covered my last question.
I'm begging now.
You kind of answered my last question. I think I was going to ask you what your message was to the listeners. So if you were talking directly to the listeners.
Well, I am. I talk to the listeners all the time. They wouldn't be listeners if I wasn't talking to them.
No, but just, from you to them, if there was anything you want to impart besides call.
I don't say a lot of times, thank you. And like I said, I never really expected this to go far. So it's a really... I'm honored. Shit.
Are you choking up?
I knew you would do this to me. But, seriously, I'm honored that y'all listen. Because I'm really nobody. I just happen to know a little bit about football and know how to put stuff out on the internet. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be heard, I guess.
Awesome. And I wouldn't say you're nobody, because at this point, I think most of Knight Nation knows who you are and appreciates the conversation that you've stirred. Because as I found out today, there's yet another new UCF podcast, and all of those podcasts wouldn't exist had you not started it. So
I don't know about that. Somebody would have done it at some point, but
eventually. But I don't think we would have had the years of content or had what we have now. I think there's 8 or 9 of them out there now. So at the end of the day, thank you obviously to the listeners for sticking with us. Thank you for continuing to, as you described, all the time and effort that goes into it, and just starting that conversation.
I have another thing to say. Thank you. But
go ahead.
If any of those guys that just started a new UCF podcast, by the way, let me know, and maybe you could do it on the Knightline Sports Network. All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yep. So, and that's a good point too, is that you provided a platform for a lot of different shows and UCF shows, both, the past that have been part of the network and that will be in the future, to get their voices heard. So, and a platform for them to reach Knight Nation.
And that's why I started that, by the way. That's why I made it into the Knightline Sports Network, was to give other people, to be able to use kind of what I've built. So I am believe it or not, I know I come off as harsh and all that and kind of a jerk, but I do like to help people out, and I like to give people opportunities to partake in what I've built. So that's why I did that. And yeah, so
happy 250, folks. Thank you for being a part of it. Now I think it's a good time to transition to the future. So let's talk about Gus time. We were last week, as we mentioned earlier, were in the midst.
By the way. Thank you for asking me those questions and all that. It means a lot to me that you're a part of this, and I appreciate everybody that's been a part of all this up until this point. So,
of course, man. I don't. It's one of those things people just don't realize how much work and effort and passion goes into it. You know now,
don't you?
Yeah.
It's
lots
all
of
fun
prep
and games until you really have to do your homework and know what to talk about and how to talk about it, and
I have reduced the pages of my notes from about 22 per show to I think we're down to maybe 8.
Yeah.
But no, it does. It does, and I have learned it does take a lot of time and effort to do that, and research, and I do film study, and you have to keep up with all the games, so you see how the players are doing, and answer questions about that and provide insights into that. And that's a time commitment. And I'm lucky that I could do that, and, been given the platform to talk about it. So I get to work with Ben, I get to work with Kyle, and have those guys in there, including that conversation with us. So it's a lot of fun for us. We've met a lot of good people, in between the players and supporters and everything. And,
I just
that's
hope that
part
we
of the
can
experience.
get back to doing some tailgate stuff where people can come up and say hi and all that stuff, because I love that. I absolutely love it when somebody comes up to our tailgate and says hi. I've listened, for this long or whatever, and I love that stuff. That's one of my favorite things about going to games and stuff like that, is that time. That's
that interaction.
Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, play some beer pong with us, folks.
Exactly.
But yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. And like I said, it's been an evolution for me, and it's been a lot of fun and a lot of learning. So.
I would also be remiss if I did not include the people that have supported us along the way, as far as sponsors as well, by the way. I keep thinking of things that I should have said when we were actually talking about that. I know we were going to move on, but Travis Dever, man, has done tremendous things for us. Really, really helped us out. Not only helped us out, but is one of my best friends. And I just feel that I would be completely wrong if I didn't say thank you to him, and Chad Barr as well. Chad Barr does a lot for the community, not only UCF but the community as well of Orlando and a lot of the high schools and everything. But he makes it possible to do the radio show and a bunch of stuff. So those two guys in particular, obviously, thank you to Kyle and the previous hosts and Ben and everybody, but the guys that really make it happen are the people that you hear the commercials on here for, and we absolutely could not do it without those guys. So,
absolutely.
Sorry, I had to get that in there as well.
No, not at all.
I'm in big trouble if I forgot about that.
Travis is calling you right now on your cell phone.
I would have got a text, thanks. No, I probably wouldn't have, but he knows. No, but they all know. They know.
Yeah, they all know, and I wouldn't be able to broadcast remotely without that support either.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Technology. For me to be able to do this and participate, I wouldn't be able to do it without those guys, and Travis specifically. And Chad, obviously with the radio show and all the support he's given us in being able to take our show to the radio. We couldn't do it without him.
Yep.
And then the new sponsors too. Anybody like Tijuana Flats and everybody that supports us. I mean, we literally could not do this
Tasty Gravy.
without it.
We wouldn't have the awesome website that we have without those guys. So, I would implore you to, go use these guys' products like Tasty Gravy, their website development and social media stuff. They're awesome at it. And then, buying a house from Travis. I know you guys get tired of hearing these commercials. I know they're the same ones over and over and over again. But that's the way, word of mouth and all that is the way that a lot of these people operate. So,
and they're alums.
Please, yes. And they're all... The large majority of them, there's only one thing that I advertise that is not an alum, and it's the Life with Outdoors thing, and it's a friend of mine, a very important friend of mine that owns that company, so that's why I'm doing that for them. But the rest of these people, including Tijuana Flats, are UCF people, and I thought that was a really big deal. And the other thing is, I just have to say, and I've told people this, I was telling somebody this today in a conversation. They were asking me about stuff, and I don't advertise for any product or service that I've never used and that I don't know about. That's a big deal to me. I don't want to just advertise for stuff that I don't know anything about, that I can't back up. You know what I'm saying? So yep. I've really tried over the years to do that. Some of, the stuff I don't know, there was a few things back in the day that we did that weren't like that. But now the advertisers that we do have, the partners that I can't really even call them advertisers, partners that we have, I believe in what they're doing and what they stand for. So
absolutely.
There you go.
Okay.
All right, enough about me. I don't talk about a lot of this stuff, so this
exactly,
is one
which
of those.
Is why I wanted to focus on it this week. If we're going to take
the time to do it, I might as well do it all. So
yeah, no, I wanted to focus that time this week and kind of give people an inside picture of that.
Brandon Hellwig as well, and I tell him this pretty much every time that we talk to him on here in the exit or intro or whatever. There's no way that I would have been able to do this without him, because he has given me video and audio of stuff when it wasn't available to me, when I had a really hard time getting it from UCF. It's a lot easier now because they pretty much put everything out to everybody. But before, especially in the beginning, they wanted nothing to do with me as a podcast. Wanted nothing to do with us. Luckily, those people have moved on from there, and it's a lot easier now. But without Brandon Hellwig and what he's provided, there's no way this could have ever happened. So that's it.
Absolutely.
That's it. No more.
No more. No mas.
All right. On to Gus Malzahn. How
it's Gus
exciting
time.
Is this? And last show, I was kind of like, oh, do we want, an older guy? And I remember like my mood for him or about the situation was changing during that show. Because I started thinking, I was just starting to talk about Gus Malzahn. And how I thought that he was older and maybe couldn't identify as well. But when he went and did that press conference, when he was announced, came in and got off the jet, the whole deal, and just the presence of this guy. And when he got up there to that podium and started talking, my mind changed 100%. And I am 100% behind him. Yes, I like Teipel. I was a guy that liked Teipel, just as a person more than a coach, because I had talked to him quite a bit. I like Jeff Lebby. It would have been awesome if Jeff Lebby was the head coach, because I would have had quite a large bit of access that I haven't had before, because I know him. I have his phone number, stuff like that. So, of course, that would have been awesome and ideal. But to have a head coach like Gus Malzahn at UCF is absolutely freaking huge. And I don't know if people understand that. I was talking a little while ago about the Twitter thing. That's how big he's a star. He is a icon, in fact, in college football. Not always the best winning record, but he's done some pretty incredible things over that time. So I was shocked when he was fired at Auburn. I know he'd been there for a long time, and maybe they needed to go a different direction. But thank God they did, because I think this is going to be really, really big for UCF in many, many ways, with recruiting, with the way that our offense works, with just our entire program. It's a program-building thing. Kyle Israel kind of said the same thing earlier, because I asked that. You'll hear that. But this is a program-building thing more than a coach at UCF. I'm so excited to have him here. I got some clips if we want to play any of those too.
Cool. Yeah, no, I mean, for me, listen, I started off the show. If you guys listened to last week's show, Andrew asked me how I felt about it, and I said, I didn't like it. That was my first sentence out. And then Andrew said, well, hold on a second. Let's talk through some of this stuff. And he kind of went through his thought process on this stuff. And, my biggest fear was obviously a cultural fit and keeping that momentum going. Was he going to be energized? I didn't want to retread. We'd gotten away from that and had gotten to the point where we had exciting offenses and a brand that was brash and, it was ready to go. And I didn't want to get away from that. I didn't want to retread. Now, kind of like you, Andrew, I listened to Gus speak at his presser, and the interesting thing, and I think the head turner for me was when he said, I have never been fired from a job, and he has never been fired from a job. He's never had a losing season in 30 years of coaching. And he said, I took 8 weeks to really stop and think about where I went wrong and what I needed to change. And he came out with so much energy in the presser, and you could tell he was passionate about doing something different. This guy's a former high school coach and, all of these things.
All right, before we get on, hold on, sorry. Before we get on to something else, let me play the clip that you're talking about.
Okay, great.
This, to me, is one of the top 20 coaching jobs in all of college football, okay? And before this thing came open, I was set on setting out. But I will say this. I've been coaching 30 years. They're getting the best Gus Malzahn coach of any time in my career, from the fact that I had 8 weeks to reflect, refresh, kind of evaluate too, and to be better the next time you do it. And so that's when I tell you at the very first that I'm one of the most excited I've been in my whole coaching career. It's legit.
That's why I'm excited right there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's kind of funny, though, now that I listen to it back, right? It's like I feel like we're in the SEC because in recent history, we haven't had a coach that's been had that much of a Southern drawl. So,
well, he's an SEC coach. That's where he made his name.
Yeah, absolutely. But to your point, and kind of what I was making earlier too, is I was scared for the program that we would regress under a retread. And he called himself out, and it takes a lot to do that. And he was pretty genuine during his presser when he was talking about it. And I do believe him when I say I think we're getting the best Coach Malzahn in 30 years, because he had the opportunity to reflect and realize that it wasn't going as well as he wanted it to. So now he's got an opportunity to change that direction. He'd mentioned that he was going to call every play again. That was successful for him. His last 2 years at Auburn, he didn't do that. And he's energized about getting back there and being successful again. So for me, I after that presser, he definitely won the press conference. And I think a lot of people changed their minds, because even if you just look at Twitter, it was a complete 180 in a very short period of time once we heard him speak and understand what his vision for the program is.
And he's building a hell of a staff, too. I mean, this is going to be exciting with some of these guys. Man, I had it pulled up and it's gone, but I'll have to pull it up here again. I had the whole staff laid out in front of me. But the guys that he is hiring, there's some older guys and there's some younger guys. There's guys that he has worked with or has had contact with over the years and knows these guys. There's some Kansas guys. I'm really excited about that. Some guys that have come from my program when I played college football, which is crazy when some of these names are coming back up. Terry Mahajer is one of them. He was a GA in my last 2 years there. And then now our defensive backs coach, co-defensive coordinator, was my position coach. David Gibbs literally was my position coach at Kansas my last 2 years playing there. That is freaking exciting to me. Just on a personal level, just because I know what kind of a coach this guy is firsthand. It was a long time ago, so who knows what he's like now, but I remember him, obviously, as a very good football coach, and I bet he's even a better football coach now, so I'm extremely excited to have him, David Gibbs, here. That's awesome.
Yeah, then it breathed some new life into the program, I think. I think we kind of were getting to a point where we needed a reset. Right after the football season, a lot of us were saying we kind of had fatigue because of all the expectations that we had and how it didn't work out this year. So, going into the off season, a lot of people were kind of down, and then all of a sudden our Danny White, our beloved AD, was gone, and then Coach Heupel left, and everybody kind of looked around and said, oh boy, well, is this where we start to, slide backwards a little bit? And then we brought in our new AD and Timo, or T-Money, whatever you want to call him. And then you've got Gus that comes in right after that. And I feel it's a palpable feeling that it breathed new life into the program and the fan base. And you're starting to see ticket sales go up again. And so there's a level of excitement that hadn't been there. And I think what's different about this time is that level of excitement, we know, and I believe him, this is not going to be 2 years and I'm heading off to the next job that throws money in my way.
Why would it be for Gus Malzahn? He's got all the money he can ever wish for, to be honest with you. He doesn't need even the money that we're giving him to do this job. You know what I'm saying? He's got a $21 million buyout because they fired him. That's a huge amount of money. We're paying him a third of that, or half of that, actually, through 5 years, though. But, he's making half of the money that he was making at Auburn to coach here because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the money. That's huge when a guy is not chasing notoriety and fame and money. It's a totally different ballgame. And that's a guy that will stay. Sometimes these guys stay and wear out their welcome, though, as we saw with George O'Leary over the years. You know what I'm saying? It went down and down and down for him fairly quickly.
Well, yeah, it was a roller coaster, and then he kind of stepped away and put his pick for his his successor in Brent Key, and that didn't work out too well.
Well, luckily
that was 2015.
Luckily, that didn't even happen. But I just feel like I would love to see somebody stay around as long as they're winning. So my hope is that Gus Malzahn can take us to the next level even. I don't know if that means the Power Five. I don't know if that means into the playoff. I'm not sure what that means yet because you never know what can happen. It's UCF. You never know what can happen.
Well,
maybe
I can tell
be
you
independent. Who knows what's going to happen? But with a guy like Gus Malzahn at the helm that has been there and done that, I think that's the biggest thing. And a guy that is not looking to go to the next level because he's been there and he's done that. And he doesn't, he's 55, 56. I mean, that's when you want to, really settle down. I'm sure his wife is tired of moving, different places and stuff since the beginning of his career. It's different when you're an older guy. I mean, just like a George O'Leary. I mean, he stayed here for a long time. I'm hoping that Gus Malzahn will be successful and he can bring in younger coaches, newer coaches like he's doing, and these guys can all be successful together and make this, focus on our program versus whoever the coach is. And that's one thing that Terry Mahajer said as well, is it's not who the coach is, it's what the program is. That's a big deal.
And George O'Leary was 57 when he started here. So that's a very good analogy there with Gus, right? And I mean, they obviously came off of different circumstances before they landed here, but it's a very similar analogy. And I think to your point, he's already elevating us because if you noticed, and I know you did because we texted about it separately, but to the listeners, there was more national media at that presser than has ever been there for a UCF coach. I mean, you had everybody calling in.
Yeah, that's there. Yeah, I mean, this guy is on a whole different level than any of these other guys have ever been on, except maybe George O'Leary. George O'Leary, has been there and done that. He was in the AA or the ACC and all that stuff, not SEC, but it's a whole nother level. This guy is extremely popular, and I would say that he is probably one of the top 10 football coaches in all of college football. I don't know, what does the SEC have, 12, 14? I think they have 12 now.
12.
Yeah, well, he was one of those guys. And if everybody says the SEC is, and as we see, the SEC's the biggest one, we may agree or disagree on that, but if you look at it, they've won the most championships of recent time and all that stuff. And, that was the competition that Gus Malzahn is used to having. So I'm just so
on top of that,
I'm so excited.
Yeah, and think about this too. If you read some of every single article that was out there, every single one of them was suggested he could take us to the Power Five. That was the first thing the national media went through.
Talked about it already. I mean,
but that narrative is being written as we speak,
right.
And from a program perspective, that is. That is huge for UCF. If we can, what we want to do, if there is realignment in 5 years, like some people have talked about, no matter what happens, we have to put ourselves in the best position to take advantage of it, right?
Yeah.
And so we've got a good coach that's coming in who's got a brand. We've built some brand on our own with the undefeated seasons, but now we've got someone who's going to continue that national interest, right?
I think that one of the biggest things here with that is he has triggered huge people want to know, everybody's watching to see what happens with Gus Malzahn being at UCF. I guarantee you we're going to have more press coverage and stuff than we've ever had just because of that. I guarantee you that first game, everybody, all those people, all the people on the committee, everybody is going to be watching to see what Gus Malzahn is able to do at UCF. They're going to have their eyes on us, if for nothing else, for that. Just because
the first game's Boise, so it's going to be a big game altogether.
It's a big deal. big deal for us. I don't know about nationally how big of a deal that is, but it'll be a bigger deal now because Gus Malzahn is here. I mean, that in itself is exciting. That in itself is kind of what we wanted to do. We wanted to get the eyes on us. Well, now they're on us, so we have to win that game. That's
so
a big deal.
And if he does win, that will continue that narrative, right? We've already got that challenger brand status.
It'll continue either way. It'll continue, whether he wins or loses, because they'll be watching either self-destruction or the latter. I mean, either
I'm
way,
hoping for success.
Well, of course, yeah, but I guarantee you there's people out there that want Gus Malzahn to fail, and then there's a lot of people out there that want him to succeed, and I think a lot of those people, believe it or not, are Auburn fans. I think we're going to have huge crossover between Auburn fans. He is loved there. I don't care how bad the situation was when he left. He's still loved by Auburn fans.
And hated by Alabama fans. Exactly. So this is different. It's taking us to the next level as of a head coach. And I think it takes us to the next level as a program just by having him. I really do. I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but I honestly believe that. All right, hey, let's take a break real quick. We need to do that, and then we'll come back and talk more about this.
Hey, this is Travis Dever, Kai's Real Estate, the Dever team, New Smyrna Beach. Your source for real estate and everything else, New Smyrna Beach. Proud sponsor of Knightline. Call me anytime at 386-690-1636. That's 386-690-1636. Let me show you my hometown, New Smyrna Beach, UCF's favorite beach. Go Knights and charge on.
An auto accident can change your life forever. At Chad Barr Law, we are raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney. Hi, I'm Chad Barr, and I want you to know that our entire team is dedicated to providing you with the representation you deserve in your greatest time of need. If you or a loved one have been injured in an auto accident, call 407-599-9036 for a free consultation or visit chadbarlaw.com. At Chad Barr Law, our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices, Altamont Springs.
Looking for more out of your Porsche? Look no further than Flat6Motorsports.com. They have the widest selection of aftermarket Porsche parts anywhere in the world. With over 85 product lines and in-depth expertise, Flat6Motorsports.com is your one-stop shop for any Porsche performance needs. Whether you're shopping for intakes, exhausts, suspension, or tuning, they have you covered. Flat6Motorsports.com is the premier Porsche aftermarket specialist. Check them out at Flat6Motorsports.com.
We're going to recruit Florida like nobody else. We're going to recruit like our hair is on fire. We're going to go after the best players in America, and we're not backing down to anybody. We've got a lot to offer here, and we're going to put together a staff that will be able to do that. The footprint that we'll be recruiting in, I've already got experience. I already know the top players, I already know the coaches and everything that goes on. Florida will be our priority, but we'll also recruit Georgia, we'll recruit Alabama, and we'll recruit South Carolina. Now, if we have relationships outside of a certain player, we will, but we're going to spend our most of our time within a 6-hour circle.
All right, well, there you have it from Gus Malzahn about recruiting, and I think that's what a lot of UCF fans want to hear. We've been clamoring for it for years and years and years. Scott Frost was a little bit better at it, maybe than Heupel was, but we want those kids from Florida. We want to recruit in the fertile ground that we have here, especially in Central Florida, because there's tons of players. Every SEC roster is covered with Florida kids, and we want some of those guys to play for us as well.
Yeah, some of our best players came from locally. Gabe Davis was a great example of that. Bam was really good before he got injured. There's lots of local kids for us to choose from. And here's the crazy thing about it. And I like the fact that he mentioned that he would maintain relationships. So for some reason, we've got something going on with Arizona, but more importantly, Hawaii. I think we've really got a good pipeline going there. And most of the big schools go into Hawaii to get Polynesian kids and also Hawaiian kids. So for us, I think it's super important for us to continue to maintain those pipelines. But at the same time, George O'Leary used to get a lot of good guys out of Georgia. Having Florida and South Florida and some of the hires that we'll talk about later, it's obvious that we're trying to put a fence around Florida and South Florida and Central Florida. So this guy's come out of the like the phrase he used. He's come out of the gate with his hair on fire, because the next night, before he even had a staff, he's out there offering 3, 4, 5-star kids on his own by picking up the phone from his hotel room immediately after his press conference. So that makes me think there's a lot to be said for that. And Gus will get you in kids' homes that wouldn't normally be the case.
Absolutely.
Because he has that name recognition.
Yeah, all these kids know who Gus Malzahn is, I guarantee it. I don't care where they're from. They all know who Gus Malzahn is, and he will bring kids here that we could never have gotten before. I believe, and I'll tell you later, it's a hot take that I'm going to do. I've got a hot take about this. I'll save that for later, but we're going to get kids that we never would have expected to get before.
Yeah, and the big thing is not just offering them, but closing them, and he'll have much better sway. That kid that's a 4-star that's looking at us versus Kentucky, I think he'll be able to, he and his staff will be able to sway that kid and be able to tell the story of what the opportunity is to stay home. Because the reality is there are 11 teams that have played in the playoffs since its inception. And the guys and the folks that we've been recruiting for 4-stars in the past are none of those teams, right? Yeah. So we pick up a few transfers from those teams, but in general, when we're going through recruiting cycles, we're the ones that are going to New Year's Six bowl games and having those experiences and that exposure for their future NFL careers. And all of those things.
So right now he's got a 4-star receiver out of Alabama that's on his radar. A no star, but it's early because this guy's a class of 23. That's the other thing. He's already recruiting kids for the class of 23. So he's got a class of 22 4-star out of Alabama, a class of 23 guy out of Alabama, a class of 23 guy out of Orlando, a class of 23 guy out of Alabama, another class of 23 guy out of Alabama, another class of 23 guy from Kissimmee, and then a class of 22 guy that had originally committed to Auburn, who's a 3-star, 5'10", 175 athlete. So I'm not sure what position he would be up for. Then a class of 22 guy from Bradenton that's a 4-star. A class of 22 guy that is a 4-star from Alabama, a class of 23 guy from Jacksonville, a class of 22 guy 4-star from Georgia, another class of 22 4-star from Hallandale, Florida, and another guy from that same area for class of 22, and then a Miami Gardens 3-star class of 22. It keeps going. I mean, there's tons. Another kid from Hallandale Beach, 22. Class of 22 guy from that exact same school, so he knows somebody there, obviously. Yep. Here's a 3-star, a 4-star offensive tackle from Alpharetta, Georgia. A kid from Tennessee, so he went a little bit out of that area that he was talking about. Class of 23 kid from Paris, Tennessee, and that's, I think, the newest one. So he's going after these kids, and a lot of them are 4-stars, and maybe even more than that as their high school season goes on this year. We'll see. So he's going after the big guys. I mean, he's not going after the guys that we're used to going after. And he's going to land some of these guys. Mark my words, he will land some of these guys because he's Gus Malzahn. And because Gus Malzahn is at UCF. All these kids know who UCF is, and all these kids know who Gus Malzahn is. So
And unless they're going to a few of those schools, he'll be able to tell those stories as to get them as to why they should come to UCF and experience that and win championships, because we have the opportunity to do that. Right?
Absolutely.
Kentucky doesn't. Ole Miss doesn't. Mississippi State doesn't. None of those teams have the opportunity to win championships because they're in there with Alabama and LSU and everybody else and Auburn. Right?
I promise you he will get some of these kids that we never, ever would have had a chance to get before. I promise you.
I agree.
I guarantee it, which is awesome. And that'll make and you're going to see like the type of kids that he's trying to get, especially these offensive and defensive linemen, are freaking massive. And that's what we need. Because if you've watched the last couple of years, especially this last year, I noticed it more than I have in a long time. We were looking small compared to some of these schools, especially some schools in the American.
Cincinnati
and Tulsa were the two that really, like, it just was glaring to me watching it on TV, on the TV screen, and seeing the size difference between our guys and their guys. I think that was a huge mistake to really not recruit size on the offense and defensive line, and I think that we've seen what's happened because of that. So I'm excited about that. That's the biggest thing that I'm seeing so far in all of these recruits. They're big dudes. So looking forward to that. Big time.
All right. So that's been a big issue for Knight Nation. I think he had a little bit of a quote on scheduling. Shall we play that one next?
Yeah, let me find that real quick. All right, here we go. I love this quote. This is probably actually my favorite one of all because it's kind of funny.
I'll play out in the parking lot, all right? Terry can decide if we're playing at home or on the road or two for whatever. I mean, I just want to play him and I want to beat him.
I love that. I don't care if we play him in the parking lot. I think that's awesome. So there's been a little bit of discussion, and people had asked both of them later on in these press conferences, like, would they do the 2-for-1s? Would Terry Mahajer, change his, because he was kind of a 1-for-1 kind of guy there at Alabama State, or not Alabama State, Arkansas State. Yeah, sorry. We were talking about Alabama so much. But at Arkansas State, that's kind of been his philosophy as well. So we'll see if that changes. I know for a fact that they have been looking at the schedule, and they both talked about wanting to play top 10 teams, wanting to get a top 10 team in here and not only play the top 10 team, but beat the top 10 team. I think that's important because we all laughed last year when the one across the state that's not really south.
The Cows.
Yeah. They, put out this poster, to be the best, you got to play the best, or whatever it said. It said something stupid like that. And it should be to be the best, you got to beat the best, but they just think it's playing the best. They got some high profile, games, but they're getting whooped in them so far. I mean, what happened against Notre Dame with those guys? Why would you even do that if you're going to get whooped like that? And
because
Wisconsin
they have no money
was another
going
one,
into the
I think.
program.
Didn't Wisconsin come in and play them and just whoop the living daylights out of them?
Yep.
So, the thing that these guys are saying, though, is we want to play those teams and we want to beat those teams. Beating them is the more important than playing them, obviously. The marketing team over there is horrid. Like, they're horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Well, even Terry Mahajer during the presser made mention of that and said, you don't just have to play them, you have to beat them. So I was like, all right, go Timo. You're getting a little dig in there early.
I like him as well. He has some fire. I know him as well from Kansas. He was a GA, like I said. One of the things that I like is a response that he had at the very end of his press conference the other day when somebody was asking him a question about, what about the other names that crossed your desk? Let me play this one for you real quick, just because I want to get a Terry Mahajer clip in here, and this is the perfect one.
Anybody that came across my desk, that's why I sequestered myself for 3 days. I looked at them. I gave everybody an honest day evaluation, and this is the result we got, and I think we did a damn good job.
I love it. See, that is fire right there. That's fire. When somebody, says to the national media, all of them were listening, all of them were there. He didn't mince words. He said, I think I did a damn good job. And I think it's awesome. And that is what you want in your AD. A guy that thinks that he, did his due diligence and is proud of what he did. And it was a coup to get Gus Malzahn here. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we liked about Danny White was, he spoke out. And so it looks like Mohajer's doing it, but doing it in a different way.
I guarantee you that Mohajer saw everything that Danny White did here. He knows what Danny White did when he turned and looked at that camera on that fateful January morning and said, national champions. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That was a huge moment. But I think there's going to be more moments, and Terry Mohajer will be able to deliver moments like that. I guarantee he's going to be able to do that.
Going back to the scheduling thing and his history, the way he described it, because he was asked during the presser about that too, and they talked about 2-for-1s. He's like, I never looked at him as 2-for-1s. I looked at him as 1-for-1s with a bye game.
Right.
And the big thing that both of them said and that I took away from it was, we are looking to try to make the playoff in the current setup. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that, whether it expands or not, is if we strengthen our strength of schedule and not only play the top 10 teams, but beat them. But we can't put ourselves in that position if we don't play them to make the splash.
Yeah.
And, Terry Mohajer is on the committee.
Yeah, that's another thing that I don't know if people realize, if they don't know yet. He is literally on the bowl committee, whatever it's called. I can't remember what it's
Playoff
called.
Committee.
CFP. He is part of it. He is one of the members of it. He's one of the guys that decide. So having that on our side, having our guy, Danny White should have been on there, but for some reason he wasn't. Now we have a guy that's on there for now. We'll see if they, change that. But you look at the schedules. I just pulled up Arkansas State's schedule from last year, and it's they're in the Sun Belt, so it should be able to get a lot better scheduling here. But they played Memphis, so they played an American team, Kansas State, Tulsa, Coastal Carolina, which was a good team coming out of there. For them, I guess Louisiana Raging Cajuns probably would have been a big deal. I don't know if that's in their conference or not. I don't know if they're a Sun Belt team, but still, people know about those teams. But playing some American teams and a Big 12 team was, all right for them. Let's see what they did the year before that. American, they played Georgia, who was number 3 at the time. They lost 55-0, but they played them. That season, 2019. What do they got?
Miami.
On their schedule so far, I don't really see too much on their schedule so far. But the year before that, they played Alabama. That's a big one, who was ranked number 1 at the time. So, excuse me. So he was getting top 10 teams at Arkansas State. So if he can get top 10 teams at Arkansas State, he can definitely get him here. I don't know if he was there in 2017, but they played Nebraska, Miami, SMU. So they've always, played a few of these games in the beginning. They played Auburn.
He was there for 8 years, so all of those teams would have been scheduled by him.
So USC they played Missouri. So there's been SEC teams in these pretty much all the time. They played Tennessee and Miami again the year before that.
They've got Arkansas scheduled for the first time in their history.
Yeah, they had Auburn again before that, Missouri, Memphis. So, yeah, I mean, they were getting them. He was getting those teams to come and play Arkansas State.
They played us and whooped us in the bowl game.
Well, yeah, that was a weird year, though.
Oh, my God, I was so mad that game.
I was too, yeah. But it kind of set the stage, though. It set the stage for Mackenzie Milton, number 1. Mackenzie Milton, if y'all don't remember, I sure remember, he got booed off the freaking field in that game. And everybody was chanting Holman's name. Remember that? Holman.
Yep.
Everybody wanted Holman to come in because Mackenzie Milton sucked in that game. Sucked. Imagine that, where we are now.
Yeah, we
and
almost
what we
lost
know, exactly, what we know about Mackenzie Milton, and that was against Arkansas State. So it's just, hindsight is 20/20. You look back on stuff that has happened like that. We were talking about earlier through the 250 shows and in the 6 years or whatever that I've been doing this, a lot has happened. And there were very defining moments, and I think that was one of them. And the next year after that is when, it was 2017, and we set the world's hair on fire. I don't know what I was trying to say there, but
That's all right. That works. That's our new catchphrase, I guess.
Yeah. So
just don't get it too close to mine. I don't have enough of it as it is.
You probably have a lot of product in your hair too.
That's true.
You're a hair product guy.
Wow. I've been branded, folks.
Do you dye that? Is that
No.
dyed?
It's all gray.
I'm just messing with you. So anyway, there's a lot of things that are lining up to be really good things. So obviously at Arkansas State, he was able to schedule some of these schools. If you look back through and see what they had scheduled, he knows how to do it with the Auburns and the Miamis and all that. So, and I would think, of course, wouldn't it be huge for Gus Malzahn to play Auburn at his new school? That'd be huge.
Yes.
So ESPN, I would assume, would try to help with that one. And, maybe even some of those other teams that he played for all those years.
I'm pretty sure Brian Harsin would avoid that like the plague.
He probably should, but I don't think that. I think that ESPN wants to make matchups, and when they have a chance to do that, maybe in a bowl game or whatever, I think they're going to do that. Or when they can, help. I'm sure that they help every once in a while. Something happening, they facilitate. Maybe it's an opener, like a college football opener game or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or whoever. I'm sure in the next few years, I would not be shocked if we play Auburn at some point. I think it would be crazy if we didn't. So, and maybe, who knows, maybe even Alabama. Because I don't think
we played them once before.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody, and we're 1-0 against them. I remind those Alabama fans every chance that I get.
Handed them their worst homecoming loss ever.
They were horrible that year. We have to point out. I mean, you have to be honest
ranked.
with it. They were ranked,
going
but
into
they were
that
absolutely freaking horrible. That was probably the worst Alabama team of the last 20 years. But anyway, maybe it was longer than that. But yeah. So I still, every time, and the Alabama fans have been coming out of the woodwork with the whole Gus Malzahn thing. So I reminded 3 or 4 people last week about that. So,
well, let's talk, speaking of Gus, let's talk about some differences with him. He's going to be doing a lot more, and we talked with Kyle a little bit about this, but he's going to be doing a lot more pre-snap motion. So a little bit more like what Frost was looking at. You mentioned what you mentioned also was a big change for O-line, right? So our guys are going to have to be beefier because he likes to play that power offensive or running game. And, he has some zone schemes in there as well, but he kind of mixes it up with power schemes and zone schemes, and he likes to run. So
another thing, really quick, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I interrupt because I am thinking of something and I'm going to forget if I don't. That's the way my brain works. My memory is horrible. So one of the things is that Gus Malzahn literally, you can get the book. He literally wrote the book on the hurry up, fast offense. Literally wrote the book on it. And that's when people started doing it. When he started doing it and then wrote a book about it. I know people say, "Oh, he wrote the book on it," but he literally wrote the book. Just so y'all know, go find the book. I think I'll find the name of it. I can't remember what it's called right now, and there's a lot of stuff on the internet as well. If you just search Gus Malzahn offense, Gus Malzahn offense playbook, stuff like that that's out there.
Yeah, he was telling that story on Feinbaum, and he actually said he was in a state championship team, on a state championship team that hadn't won before, and basically he was running a 2-minute offense. And he's like, we've run this successfully the first game. Why don't we just run it for the whole game? Yeah. And so he just started running it every game, and they won a state championship.
And the book is called "The Hurry Up, No Huddle: An Offensive Philosophy." It's available on Amazon.com by Gus Malzahn. Literally wrote the book on a lot of what we've seen for the last few years. This is the guy that came up with it and wrote the book on it. That's crazy, but that's true. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Now, his is a little bit different than what we've seen more recently with
Right,
Heupel.
those were adaptions on his, though.
Yeah,
in a way.
So he's got what we've seen.
The air raid's been around a long, long time.
That's a Mike Leach thing.
Right, but it was made fast. The air raid that we've seen recently was not the original air raid. It wasn't.
Agreed.
It was not run fast. So what we saw was Heupel's concept of the air raid. He took it to a different level. So I don't know if he took it to a different level because it didn't always work, but he added stuff to it. Everybody's added stuff since Mike Leach. If you look back on that, if this stuff interests you, you can do a lot of research on the internet and find a lot of stuff about these offenses. There's a website that I was looking at the other day, and I'm probably going to wind up subscribing to because it literally runs through play by play and will explain everything. It's kind of expensive, but very, very cool website. I'm going to try to find it so I can let y'all know about it. I believe it's Football X's and O's. FootballXOS.com. Very cool website. Football X's and O's. It's a subscription type thing, but they have an entire catalog of videos and stuff on the Gus Malzahn offense and different plays that he runs.
Yeah, so, and he'll use his running backs a lot more than what we've been used to seeing, right? So
he uses a fullback as well.
Exactly, he uses a fullback, and he actually likes to slip them into space. So what he does is he tries to create a multiple so that you don't know whether that person's going to be running a zone scheme, a power scheme, slip him out into the flat to break up different types of defenses, or if he's going to use his quarterback with a designed run play, whether it be a naked bootleg or he uses a lot of bubble screens, so the bubble screen will come back. We haven't really been using a lot of that lately. We've used some screens a little bit later in the season, but not really a true bubble screen. So that will be coming back. Expect to use the middle of the field more. His the air raid that Heupel was running was all with the outside receivers. We should see some more tight end play to kind of soften up that middle so that we can run that power offense. So it's going to be interesting because it's going to be different. A lot of pre-snap motion. You still got an RPO type element to the game. The speed will still be fast as a no huddle, but it won't be nearly as fast as what we've seen with 6 seconds between plays that we saw with Josh Heupel. So it's going to be very interesting. It'll be interesting to see how Dillon adjusts, how the offensive line adjusts, how the wide receivers adjust. But this guy is well liked. He's already starting to make an impact with the team there and fosters close relationships and more of a mentor type. So seeing him do that, I think he has the ability to turn that around. And what's going to be really important this year is that we have a spring football, or we think we're going to have a spring football, which we didn't have last year, and we have a lot of early enrollees. So hopefully that'll allow us to pivot a lot earlier and give us more time to install the new offensive concepts that we see.
Yeah. I'm posting something on Twitter right now, and it's all about the Gus Malzahn offense, and it explains a lot of things. So if you're interested in that, find that deal that I'm putting up right now. It'll be obviously a little bit later, but this is really cool about his offense. It has diagrams and explains a lot of stuff.
One quick thing before we move on to kind of talk about the coaching staff that's starting to come together. What, Gus said to everyone, he said UCF is a top 20 job. And that was kind of on Feinbaum and a bunch of other areas and different podcasts that was kind of argued back and forth on, is UCF a top 20 job? So I kind of wanted to get your take on that and whether you thought at this point whether UCF was a top 20 job.
Absolutely. Of course it is. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't even think that, do people really think that it's not? It's the biggest G5 job, that you could possibly get, and I believe it's bigger than that. I think even more so now with Gus being here. I think Gus would be pretty hard to follow and get everybody as excited as they have been, as we are, for sure. You could do all kinds of things at UCF. For one thing, the facilities. We have facilities that other people don't have. So I think that would be enticing to a coach. I think the history so far of the program would be enticing for a coach. I think the weather and the location would be enticing to a coach. So, and the fan base can be enticing or it can't. Either way, that could
Depends
be exciting.
on if you're winning or not.
Exactly. That could be exciting or could not be. But yeah, heck yeah. No doubt.
That's a lot of the conversation this past week surrounded around those same talking points. Is one, we as fans, we've kind of been insulated and we've got this us against the world mentality. So we don't really always think about how big of a presence that we are in the college football landscape. Right.
Yeah.
To your point, we've got the facilities of a P5 program and better than many P5 programs, right? We've got a fan base that's more engaged than many P5 programs. We've got money. We've got, our budgets are more on par with the lower tier P5s without the television money than others. And a lot of that television money goes back to the universities at those P5 programs. On top of that, we have a propensity to win and a leadership team that wants and focuses on football winning, which is not to be said. That's not something that can be said for a lot of larger programs around the country. And on top of that, we've got a stage. Yes, it sucks. We have proven so far that even going undefeated doesn't allow us into the playoff, but we do have the stage to win championships consistently, be the top of that level, and pretty much guarantee ourselves, if we win like we should and win the American, that we're going to be in a New Year's Six Bowl with all of those experiences that go along with that, which is the pinnacle of college football, because you're only going to have 4 teams that are going to go through the playoff process. So that only leaves a few bowls left, and you've got another 4 that are left out of the 130 some FBS teams that'll experience that. So that's big time football, big time stage, big time experience, and you're playing big time, highly ranked teams. So yeah, I do think that UCF is a top 20 program. And I do think if we ever either break the mold, the college football playoff expands, or we get into a P5, and Gus, you heard him, I don't know if you've got that clip teed up, but there was a clip that Gus was talking about that as well when he was talking to his Auburn staff about UCF. So I do think for all of those reasons, we are a top 20 job, but I don't think anybody's ever asked that nationally before. And you got a lot of yeses, and that kind of tells you where the brand is.
Here's the clip you're talking about.
I've had a lot of respect for the program for a long period of time. I was telling Terry during the interview process, the last 5 years, from time to time, I would tell our staff that, if the right guy ever got to UCF, if the right guy ever got there and would stay there and build it, everybody else would be in trouble. I feel like I'm that right guy.
Well, maybe that's the clip. I don't know. It was something like, I think that was paraphrasing some of it, but I think that was one of the clips.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you've got donors now that are starting to step up at an ever-evolving donor base, right? That will just mean more and more money at a very large school. So I think at the end of the day, that's very, very interested in furthering the football brand and supports its football team. So those all combine to positives. Andrew, do you think it might be good to go to a break here?
Yeah, I think that this is going to be a long show. We're already an hour and 30 minutes in it, and we have 2 interviews still that we need to play for y'all that are 30 minutes long. So this is going to be a long show. So sit tight. Pause if you have to, and go to the bathroom or park your car or whatever. Get off the treadmill. Hang in there. It's going to be a long.
Yeah, let your heart rate get down.
Exactly. All right, hang on. We'll be right back. Night Nation, I need to talk to you about something very near and dear to my heart. It's Tijuana Flat's new fajita tacos, available for a limited time. Grilled chicken or steak with fajita peppers and onions, garlic lime sauce, and guajillo chili salsa. Topped with cheddar jack cheese, crisp iceberg lettuce, and fresh pico on warm flour tortillas served with chips and salsa. We're talking good vibes and even better flavors from a whole nother plane of deliciousness. Available for a limited time either in-store or through their app and website for delivery or pickup. These aren't just fajitas. They're something better. True enlightenment. Fajita tacos. Available for a limited time only at your neighborhood Tijuana Flats.
I'm Jeff Allen. Join me each and every week on the Knightline Sports Network for the AAC Report. We bring you in-depth coverage of each school in football, basketball, baseball, softball, soccer, golf, tennis, and more, as well as bring you insider interviews and focus in on the biggest games and news of the week. That's all right here each week on the AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network.
Welcome to the Tijuana Flats Hot Take of the Week. Visit TijuanaFlats.com for takeout or delivery, or visit your local Tijuana Flats. Tex-Mex for everyone. All right, maybe we need to change the name of this because I've got one this week too. So we're going to call it the Tijuana Flats Hot Takes, or the Double Hot Take of the week.
The Double Hot Take.
Because you can find some hot sauce on their hot sauce bar that is absolutely double hot, if not triple or more. So, go check out that stuff. Those fajita things, fajita tacos that I was talking about in that last commercial, or the commercial before, those are limited time, and their time is coming very quickly to be done. So you're not going to be able to get those for very much longer. If you haven't got them, go try them. Really, really good stuff. So, and I cannot wait to see what their next thing is. They have chicken wings, by the way, at most locations now. By the way, if you didn't know that, that's interesting. But they're good. So, okay. So, hot takes. I was trying to find it. Oh, here it is. Can I do mine real quick first?
Yeah, go for it, Andrew.
Okay, so my Tijuana Flats hot take of the week is, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, you can imagine what I'm going to say, Gus Malzahn will land a 5-star recruit within 2 years. That is my hot take. I think that he's really going to go after guys, like I said, that we would have never had a chance to get here before. Now, I'm not saying if this is a recruit for straight out of high school or it's a transfer. It could be either one. But I believe that we will see a 5-star come to UCF one way or another within 2 years, and that's only been done one time in the G5, and that was Ed Oliver at Houston. So it's a big deal, and I think Gus Malzahn, being the guy that he is and having the reach that he does, will be able to talk a 5-star kid to come to UCF one way or another. So that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The only close one, we've had 4 stars here before, but the only one that I know of that would have been a 5-star would probably be Dante Culpepper, but they weren't doing that at the time.
Right.
But
during the star thing, the only one ever in a G5 school was Ed Oliver. So that would be a really big deal. It would be not a first, but a second. So that's better than nothing, just to get that level of a player. He's used to recruiting those guys. He knows all those guys, so knows what that kind of talent looks like, and he closed on a lot of them for Auburn. So who knows? But I
definitely see him doing that, especially with obviously we're hoping Dylan sticks around for a while, but I could see that happening with a quarterback in a few years because they're moving around about every year if they're not starting.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you had Tua and what was that other kid's name that was at Alabama? And he left, and then he's played really, really well at his new school. So
there's quite a few guys that have moved around over the years. And you're going to see more of it. This is college free agency after this year. If everything continues the way that it's going, you could see what happened already if you follow this stuff and how people have moved around and that transfer portal thing is a whole nother level of recruiting. And we'll see how Gus Malzahn and all the rest of the coaches, to be honest with you, handle that. Because it's recruiting just like all the rest, and there's a lot of good players in there, and there's a lot of bad players in there. There's a lot of players that transfer for a reason that are in there, besides graduate transfers and everything else. Lots of different reasons why kids transfer, and it could be very simple sometimes, like they wanted to go closer to home or whatever. Lots of reasons why kids transfer.
I will say this: he's putting together an experienced staff thus far, and all of them come from the P5, so they're used to dealing with 4- and 5-star kids and how they view the world coming out of high school. So, if anything, that should help us with that as well. And he knows all of the buttons and all the bad things that happen at the SEC, so we should be able to recruit against those schools pretty effectively.
Absolutely.
All right, so for my Tijuana Flats hot take of the week, I'm going to say the UCF softball team will not only make it to a super regional this year, but I think they're truly on the road to Oklahoma City. So, you always heard this Orto, #Orto, that was for baseball. Well, because it was Omaha for baseball and their championships. Well, for the softball teams, it's Oklahoma City. We've got Aaliyah White pitching strong as well, who, by the way, this evening became the career wins leader for UCF softball with 81 wins under her belt, and she's going to keep knocking down all of those different record books in pitching for UCF. So it's a fun season for her. Our hitting is absolutely stellar. The ladies have picked up where they were last year. We have a strong league, believe it or not. So that's exciting for softball. So we have the ability to have our RPI up there. And they've got great chemistry from last year, and they're really putting it together. Remember, that team was a tournament team last year, and we were getting ready to start the conference tournament. They were ranked, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and it completely stopped their season. So I totally foresee the way that they're playing and who we have on this team. They'll be ranked highly again, and I expect them to make it to Oklahoma City. So that'll be interesting.
All right, so those are good hot takes, I think. We'll see.
Yeah. All positive for UCF, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll see. All right, let's talk to Kyle Israel now. We talked to him a little bit earlier, but here is that interview. All right, please welcome back Kyle Israel to the show. Kyle, What a big week it has been for UCF football. Maybe it's been, I don't even know. It's been a week because we were talking about this on last week's show right before this all happened, right when it started coming out. In fact, we were doing the show and it was coming out that Gus Malzahn was probably going to be the coach. I know we talked a little bit on Tuesday night on the radio show. I had you on there. Thank you for doing that, by the way. But again, how big of a deal is this for UCF? And did you ever see anything like this happening when you were playing for UCF? I mean, Gus Malzahn is one of the biggest, probably one of the top 10 football coaches in the United States as far as college goes.
I would agree. And I think it's gigantic. I'm not sure our language has words for specifically how big this is for our program. But when you think about the national brand of Gus Malzahn and his experience and him literally writing the book on the spread offense, and then you look at his success at Arkansas State, his success as a coordinator at Auburn, as a head coach at Auburn. You asked that other question back in 2004 when I, committed around this time of year to Coach O'Leary and UCF. I don't know that I could have ever imagined a scenario where we had a coach that was at UCF that had just left an SEC school, period, whether that was because they were fired. I certainly didn't think that they would choose us over an SEC school, but I think it really shows, if we're looking for a tangible way to say, how far has our program come outside of wins and losses? This is that tangible milestone that we can put a flag in the ground and say, we've turned the corner, and whatever that means. But to have Gus Malzahn, to have Terry Mohajir, and then to see the assistants that he's putting together, the staff of assistants he's putting together, we've totally turned the corner. And I think all the success we've had from 2016, 17, 18, 19, and even in 2020, all of that now has led us to this position where we seem to have a coach who we feel like can take us to the next level, maybe not knowing what that is. But a month ago, I'm not sure we felt like we had somebody as our head coach that could do that.
It's interesting that you mentioned George O'Leary because, for a while, since Scott Frost got here, we've kind of been on this tangent where we've, gone up and down and said, okay, let's hire that hot offensive coordinator and bring them on board and allow them to take our offense forward. And this hire seems to, and after Gus's presser, seems to point to a different direction here in looking for a more longer-term, stable type of coach. What do you think that's good for the program long term? Do you think that we would have ran into some roadblocks continuing on the search and continuing with these offensive coordinators that may leave us in 2 or 3 years, or how do you think that affects everything?
Well, I think I think we're in a much more stable position right now. I think sometimes you can get really lucky in hiring young offensive coordinators as head coaches. I would say that I don't know that luck was as much of a part of Coach Frost as just perfect timing and a perfect scenario and environment for him to be in to be successful. And I think that Coach Heupel was able to leverage some of those recruits and his style did work here from an offensive perspective. But you always saw that there was an opportunity when the opportunity arose for those individuals to go on and take head coaching jobs at schools that were going to pay them $3 and $4 million a year. If we keep hiring the coordinators, we're always going to be in that position because we aren't creating, in the football coaching world, not for the regular human beings like the three of us. They haven't created that lifetime worth of wealth yet. And so moving to a $3 or $4 million per year job is something that is hard to argue with. But when you bring in a guy like Gus Malzahn, who is an offensive coordinator and is only really 55, which in my book is young, and he's the head coach, and he's had the success, and he's made all this money, I feel less concern about him taking the next job because of the paycheck or because of the 5-year, $20 million contract. And so I think that long-term sustainability is important. And long-term doesn't have to be 12 years like George O'Leary, but 8 would be nice, because then you have 2 full entire recruiting cycles to really bring in the players that you want. And you would imagine that should get stronger over time, just like we saw with Coach O'Leary. As the program progressed, we started and continued to get more and more better recruits. So I think we're in a great position as far as the long-term sustainability goes. I think when we were hiring coordinators like we were, they were always going to jump to the next job that would kind of put that financial stake in the ground for them. With Gus Malzahn, his interest is winning and building a program. It's not how much money can I put in my pockets, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing personally that makes me feel really good about this hire is that I don't expect him to go someplace very quickly. Unfortunately, if we don't know anything right now, what's going to happen as far as how it's going to be for Gus Malzahn here. And it's really hard to predict. You would think with all the experience and the coaching staff that he's getting and all that stuff, we would be ready for, winning and all that stuff. But on the other side, there's a lot of unknown as well on how he's going to, adapt to the actual players and how the players are going to adapt to him and if all that's going to work out. But what are your expectations for, say, the first year under him? I mean, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, wins and losses, just the way that things are going to be.
Well, I can tell you first and foremost, I anticipate and expect our recruiting to explode. I really do. I think that recruiting a lot of times is a mindset. I think programs that are, in the G5 like us, sometimes say we're not going to waste any money in our recruiting budget going after players X, Y, and Z because we just don't have a chance at getting them. So let's not waste our time. Let's kind of recruit in our wheelhouse. Gus Malzahn doesn't have that philosophy and mentality, and he has connections throughout the state of Florida and was a guy that was here with his feet on the ground, literally recruiting when he was at Auburn. And so first and foremost, I expect and anticipate the thing that probably didn't progress with our wins and losses like it should have, which is recruiting. Secondly, I expect to see a better Dillon Gabriel. I think that when you look, and better doesn't always mean more yards, and better doesn't mean more passes or completions, but I just expect to see a better quarterback who's being asked to do more than what he was being asked to do in Coach Heupel's offense, which at times I talked often about how much improvement I had seen out of him because of how quickly he needed to process the field in that style. But I think that Coach Malzahn will make Dillon more well-rounded, and because of that reason, we'll see a better Dillon Gabriel. And then I expect us, to be the team that contends with Cincinnati in the East to get into the conference championship. Now they're bringing back their starting quarterback and 14 other players, and I tip my hat to those guys because the allure to the next level can be challenging to not jump at. But Cincinnati's going to be a freaking really good football team, and I would expect us to be ready to compete with them on the road to get us into the conference championship. And if we're in a position in that game to give ourselves a shot at making a conference championship and potentially hosting a conference championship, I would say anything above that, like beating Cincinnati and getting into that championship game, would be icing on the cake going into next season. But I expect us to be an 8-9 win team, and in those close ball games early on with Boise State and then with Louisville on the road.
Yeah. I'm going to step in and ask one more question. I'm sorry, Roger. You'll have your chance here in a second. I thought that this one was important at this moment. What do you know? I've watched a little bit of tape on Gus Malzahn. I've watched some Auburn football. What do you know, especially the differences between Scott Frost's offense, Heupel's offense, and Gus Malzahn's offense?
Well, I think if you think of, I think Coach Frost and Coach Malzahn's offense are closer to being similar than Coach Heupel's. And a lot of that has to do with the running game, right? We know that we were basically a zone run team with Coach Heupel, where the running back was just trying to find his way through the line of scrimmage, basically to the left or the right of the center. But Coach Frost and Coach Malzahn, they build in power running games into their spread offense, and they leverage motions and shifts to create matchups so that they can run the football downhill. And I think that is something that we saw work very well for us with Coach Frost. I think that's one of the reasons that we're able to beat a team like Auburn, who plays in the SEC, is because when we needed it, we were able to get those 6 and 7 yard runs when it was tough. And so I think that's a similarity. I think the RPO, the run pass option in Coach Frost and Malzahn's offense, is a little bit different from Coach Heupel's. I think it's disguised better. And lastly, I think that, we remember Jordan Akins and what he was able to do at tight end for UCF. And our tight ends have basically been split out in Coach Heupel's offense. And I think Coach Malzahn is similar to Coach Frost, where they can get those guys in the block, but they also can leverage them in the passing game with their hand out of the ground. And so I think we'll see a bit more of what Coach Frost's offense felt like. But ultimately, I think that Coach Malzahn is going to recruit big along the offensive line. And like we've said over the last year, in the state of Florida, there's enough talented running backs that you should be able to have an established running game as a part of your offense. Even if you are a team that's going to throw for 300 yards a game, the running game is what can separate you and give you a chance to go to a New Year's Six bowl game and win, or potentially make it in to the playoffs if you go undefeated. It's not when the playoff committee sees a team that's able to still run the football while scoring a lot of points, that makes them more valuable and makes them feel like they can be a team that can play on the same level as teams 1, 2, and 3. So I think it'll look very different than Coach Heupel, similar to Coach Frost, but it'll still be a unique touch. And with G.J. Kinney and his experience in a bunch of different offenses as our new offensive coordinator, I'm excited to see what they come out with, because I think it's going to be very, very diverse.
Yeah, and Kyle, I think you hit a lot of my questions on the head, which is great, because we're thinking along the same lines. The big question for me, and with Frost's offense, the difference was he was trying to get his offensive linemen to that second level right away, and would use stunts and things like that to get people there. Whereas now, to your point, we're using, or Malzahn uses a lot more of that power game. And that means against teams like Cincinnati that have those big front defensive lines, we're going to have to make some adjustments both in strength and conditioning, and just learning different blocking schemes for our offensive line. So from their perspective, how difficult will it be to make that shift, and how fast do you think they can do that? And also the wide receiver route tree is going to be completely different than it was under Heupel as well. So what can they do to make adjustments there? Because Malzahn will use the middle of the field a lot more.
Well, I think we're pretty lucky in those two areas, because a lot of it just comes down to reps and rigor. Like, how often can you get out as a wide receiver and learn the new route tree? You can do that pretty freaking often, even without catching a football. And so those types of adjustments aren't as challenging, and I think that it'll be easy for the wide receivers to transition. Now, do we have the size and speed that Coach Malzahn wants for his offense? I don't know the answer to that. But I think from our current wide receivers being able to pick up new plays, new route trees, that's just all repetition. And I think a little bit of that is to be said for the offensive line. Now, you add a little bit more mental element to the game for offensive linemen, because you've got to find who you're blocking each and every play, and it all based off the front that you're seeing and their shifts and stunts. And Cincinnati does a great job at doing all those things as well. But it's just learning new footwork. It's just learning new collision points. And it's not as challenging as learning a new offense is like for a quarterback. Like, Dylan's got to learn reads and protections, and where are my adjustments, and when do I audible, and all these different things. For the offensive line, it's like, okay, I'm taking a 6-inch bigger step to this direction, and now my point of attack, rather than it being this A-gap defender, it's now going to be to the second level to the Mike linebacker. And all that stuff can really get worked out over the next 6 months. It really can. And so I think those are really good points to highlight, and I think those are things that are going to have to be adjusted and accounted for. But I also think there's some of the easier things with time, specifically, to be able to learn and grow and get better at. And, I think for our O-line, it's going to come down to, continuing to get stronger, continuing to be a force up front, because our running game is now going to be partially downhill, partially power, which is totally different than what we were doing, which was basically zone blocking and catching defenders when they were rushing the passer. And so I think we'll see some adjustments, and it'll take some learning, but you can get all that done with reps. For a guy like Dylan, it's harder to do, or any quarterback, because you need live reps with people in front of you to be able to slow down what you're seeing.
All right. If you were, I guess I don't really want to ask it like this, but I don't know how any other way to ask it really. If you were Dylan Gabriel, in his situation and being recruited by Heupel and being in that system and flourishing in that system, he leaves. The entire situation that's just happened basically for him. How would you feel about that as far as being a quarterback? If it was you, not if it was him, but if it was you in his scenario, if that makes any sense.
Well, I think there would be some natural nerves at the beginning, because for me, I would have felt really good coming off 2 seasons where I was able to put up ridiculous amounts of yards and throw for 60 plus touchdowns, and I would have felt very comfortable in my production and have wanted to continue that and get better. And when you bring in a new coach, there's a couple things I would think about, like, man, I got to learn a new playbook. I got to learn 6 new offensive coaches. I got to build a new relationship with my head coach. And, what are my teammates going to buy into this new head coach? At the same time, Gus Malzahn is so well respected and has done so well from an offensive perspective, and then to hear that he's going to be the play caller, I'd be super stoked. I mean, I'd be all about, okay, how do I get in here? How do I learn this new offense? It would be a new challenge. There's excitement to new challenges. You know that you're getting coached by somebody who has a lot of experience and has been successful at every level. And I would be very excited, a little bit nervous, but very excited.
You've seen quarterbacks do really well in Malzahn's scheme.
Especially when he's calling plays.
Yeah. So, I would think that you would just be like extremely excited to be knowing what you know about Malzahn and the way that he does things. I would think that you would automatically think that you're in pretty good hands and be pretty excited about playing in that system.
I would be very excited. I would think that I was in good hands, to your point. I'd be able to get over a little bit of the emotional sadness from not getting my buddy, Coach Levy from Ole Miss. But I think, it's bigger than that. And Dylan, knowing that he has 2 years left to play, I think I would be super duper pumped, because it's going to be an offense that's more diverse. Everything's not going to be on you as much. And that he's going to find a way to be able to run the football. And for a quarterback, yes, everybody loves throwing the ball, but it's great when you have a solid running game, because it takes a little bit of the pressure off.
Yeah, and that's, both of you brought this up, and one of the things that was on my mind is Gus Malzahn's quarterbacks, the ones that have flourished under him, have been mobile. And up until this point, Dylan has been a pocket passer for the most part, and they've been trying to push him to move around in the pocket a little bit more. However, when you see him do that, 9 times out of 10, it isn't designed plays, whereas Gus will have naked bootlegs and a bunch of other different wrinkles in there to help him with the blocking schemes to run. Do you think that affects him in a positive way and gives him more confidence in that ability to do that? Or do you think this is going to be tougher for him to kind of get over since he's been used to being a pocket passer?
I think that's one of the biggest questions, Roger, and a great question. It's one of my main concerns, and for a couple reasons. I mean, number one, the mindset of being a running quarterback, or a quarterback that is in a game plan that has design runs, is different than a quarterback sitting in the pocket. And I just mean that from a mentality of like toughness and willingness to take a hit and willingness to deliver a hit. And when you look at Cam Newton and what Coach Malzahn did with Cam and some of the other quarterbacks that he's had that have been successful, they have run the ball 10 to 14 times a game. They have been a part of the running game from a design perspective. And I don't have many answers to, can Dylan get it done? I think we're just going to have to see. Now, he's not the most fleet of foot quarterback, but he is pretty athletic. But it's different than just escaping the pocket, like you said. So I think that's one of the big questions that I'm looking forward to seeing how he looks in spring football, if there is spring football. And I think it's one of the questions going into next season is how does Coach Malzahn work with Dylan as far as the running game is concerned, and is that a big part of our offense?
What do you know about this guy coming from Hawaii, and do you think that there is a connection between Hawaii and our Hawaii players? Because he was at the University of Hawaii doesn't mean that he knows anything about our Hawaii players.
I don't know that there's any connection at all. I mean, he was only there for 1 year, I believe. So maybe there's some natural connection. Like, I know what that life on the island is like. I know what living in Hawaii is like. There's kind of that, every time I meet somebody that's Russian or Polish, I have this odd connection because I live there and I think it's pretty cool. And maybe there's that kind of vibe. But I don't think there's any type of intrinsic connection. Secondly, GJ Kinney's a young coach. He may be one of the guys.
I couldn't think of his name, by the way, so thank you.
He may be one of the guys that is a coordinator for a period of time here, and then we may see him go on somewhere else. But I think that his experience working with Mike Norvell, his experience working with Chad Morris, who was the offensive coordinator at Clemson, I think that type of experience will really be valuable to our offense. And I think he's extremely talented. He's extremely young, so I think there'll be a natural, strong connection with our players, specifically with our quarterbacks. And he's got a broad experience. Now, Coach Malzahn's going to call the plays, right? So I don't think that there's going to be as much pressure on GJ to be able to call plays in the game. And it's a great learning experience for him to watch how Coach Malzahn calls plays within a game. But I think there's a lot of value in bringing him on as the OC. I think he'll bring a lot of diversity from an offensive scheme perspective. And I like that he's a young and up-and-coming coach because it'll be a little bit easier connection for our players.
Yeah, he's actually an interesting character there because he played quarterback for Tulsa against Hawaii in 2010, and when Hawaii was ranked, it was one of their better seasons in their history, and he beat them in the Hawaii Bowl. So he's got some NFL background. He's also at his last stop, he was focused on quarterbacks as well under Todd Graham. So I think my read on his hire is more, hey, I have to hire someone who's younger, who's not expecting play calling duties because I want to do that. At the same time, I can mentor him, but I need someone who's a strong quarterback coach. And he said at his presser he was going to bring in a strong quarterbacks coach. So that's kind of my read on Kinney's hire. So it'll be really interesting to see how that works out. Now, it's what do you think about the mix of the coaches? We've got some guys like the offensive line coach Hand, who comes to us with a ton of experience. And we've got some guys like Kinney and our defensive coordinator that came in that don't have as much as experience. What would you like to see? Do you have a preference one way or the other, or do you think it's good to mix it up?
No, I think mixing it up is the right thing to do. I think that there's sometimes you got to hire people in life, not just football, but in business in general, that may not have the qualifications for the job. But if you see, their abilities and their coachability and their ability to be molded, you hire them anyways. And then I think there's times in life where you hire a really experienced person because you got to do something specific. In this case, I think it's a good mix of both. I think that for college football coaching staff, the mix is really good because there's a lot of behind the scenes meetings and time spent together that we just don't see, where that variety in that environment and atmosphere, I think, is healthy for a coaching staff. And at the same time, you're providing a diverse group of men to lead your team, and they can connect to players in different ways. And so I like what I see. I think that Coach Malzahn has been very thoughtful about how he brings this staff together. And I think it's very, very well-rounded. You bring in a young and up-and-coming defensive coordinator that's on the younger side, and you put a co-defensive coordinator that's been around for a long time. And I think all those moves are very smart, intelligent moves by Coach Malzahn.
All right, Kyle, this is episode 250, and you have been a large part of a lot of these episodes, and I just want to say thank you. You gave us some name recognition and a sponsor at one point and all kinds of stuff, and I don't think we would be at 250 if it wasn't for people like you, and I really appreciate it.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, and listen, I was, like I told you 5 years ago, I was very passionate about being a part of anything in Central Florida that was talking UCF football or UCF sports. I did something in 2010, 11, 12 where I was trying to provide that platform myself. And so for you guys to do this and put this together, it's not an easy thing to do. It takes up a lot of time. It's like another job. And so I give you a lot of credit for keeping your head down and working through it. And I'm glad that I can be a part of it. And honestly, it's been a really exciting 5 years. There's been so many ups and downs along the way. I do remember literally coming on the podcast every Sunday after we lost every game in 2015. And we were kind of talking about basically not football. It was like, what can you talk about to make ourselves feel better? But we've seen so many ups and downs and more ups than downs along that 5 year time frame. And I'm just glad to be a part of it and looking forward to what 2021 has to hold.
Absolutely. It's going to be an exciting year, and we'll have a lot to talk about. It's exciting just to have something new at UCF. This whole Gus Malzahn era, I think, is going to be exciting, at least, for a while until we don't win anymore. But I think that'll hopefully be a long time. I think that things will get off to a good start and keep rolling here. So,
agreed.
Yeah, thank you very much again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good, guys. Have a great rest of the show.
Raising the bar and what to expect from your personal injury attorney is our commitment to you at Chadbar Law. I'm Chad Barr, and as a UCF alum, I am proud to present Knightline at Night, Central Florida's only call-in show dedicated to our UCF Knights, every Tuesday at 9 p.m. And remember, if you or a loved one are injured in an auto accident, call us at 407-599-9036 to schedule your free consultation, or visit us at chadbarlaw.com. Offices Altamont Springs. Go Knights, charge on.
Hey Jeep Wrangler owners, have you ever sat in your office at work and watched the rain just pour into your Jeep because the weatherman said that there was a 0 chance of rain? Or you put your doors back on because there was a 100% chance and then not a drop of rain fell? Well, there's a company out there that can help take the worry away and give you the peace of mind to be without your doors. The company's called Life Without Doors. They make waterproof rain curtains and dash covers for Wranglers. Life Without Doors is there to help make the decision to leave the doors at home an easy one. Find out more at lifewithoutdoors.com.
Spice up your company with homemade marketing services from Tasty Gravy Creative.
Tasty Gravy serves up a menu of budget-friendly marketing, graphic design, and public relations services customized to your specific goals. Co-owned by a UCF graduate, Tasty Gravy can help refresh your brand, strengthen your online presence, or reinforce your company's message. Contact Tasty Gravy for help with your website, social media, marketing, advertising materials, and more. Visit tastygravy.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Knightline's own 7-footer, Ben Big Social Stout, and Inside the Paint. All right, welcome back, Big Ben Stout, to the show. Ben, man, what a week of UCF basketball, culminating with an 84-81 win over Tulane. Started with a T.
Yeah, we're finally going into a week where I think it's been all the way since the beginning of the season where we could I'll be on the podcast with you guys, and we're talking about a week that we won 2 games and had no losses. So it feels good. It feels good to talk to you guys.
Yeah,
about
we aren't
wins.
starting it with. Yeah, we aren't starting it with. What's going on with our basketball team?
Happened? What happened to our basketball team?
What happened to our
basketball team? That's right. Yeah. They seem to have been getting
right, well,
getting
they're
it together,
winning now. What happened to our basketball team?
Well, they've cleaned up a lot of things, and they've really started to click offensively. They've been getting much more balanced scoring from multiple people. We still haven't seen that one game this year where Darius Perry, Brandon Mahan, and Darren Green Jr. all go off at the same time. But it kind of doesn't matter when you've got guys like Isaiah Adams going for a career high 26 points, going 10 of 11. He hit his first 10 field goals, which is tied a UCF record to go 10 for 10 in his first 10 there. First 10 shots. He missed his 11th, but we won't hold that against him. He played fantastic, the young freshman. Good to see him get back going. And CJ Walker had a great week. Kind of continued. He's kind of really come into his own on this team. Been much more than this super athletic energy guy that's going to grab you boards. I mean, he certainly is playing that role well and flourishing in that role, but seems to be with every game that goes by, seems to be much more comfortable in the offense, much more comfortable in what he brings to the offense, not trying to force anything. As he said after the game against the Cows, where he had a great game there, he said that he's just kind of letting the game come to him a little bit more on the offensive end, and it really shows. He had a stretch, not to bounce around too much, but he had a stretch on the Saturday's game against Tulane where right after he got a little frustrated and got that technical foul, he scored about 9 straight points coming out of it once he got back into the game. Just kind of calmly, just kind of took it to them and made them pay for some of the reasons why that technical foul occurred.
I liked the technical foul
in a smart way.
and we talked about this a little bit. We were texting back and forth. I like to see that fire. Yes, I understand he could have been kicked out for that, blah, blah, blah. But I think at that time in the game, that was necessary to make a little bit of fire with what was going on, because he was getting, that guy was all over him. And it was time for him to assert himself. Sometimes I like to use the saying, sometimes you have to show your teeth. And I think that's what he did.
Yeah, he absolutely did. Like I said over text message to you, Andrew, he's got to be careful there. He can't get kicked out of the game because we need him. He's really played so well that he's become such an integral part on both ends of the floor for us. That certainly if we were missing him in that kind of last 10 minutes of the game, it really would have been a struggle there when Tulane went on their run. But that being said, thank God he didn't get kicked out because, like I said, he came back in the game and just kind of went right after him. The same guy he was battling with all day, and Kevin Cross had this really nice baseline spin move on the left-hand side that it got an and one there, and then caught a lob on the very next play. I think he scored about nearly 9 straight points right there on that little run. He's just been playing great, and I love to see the fire. I just want to make sure he doesn't remove himself from the game. But what you do like to see, and Coach Dawkins actually commented on this after the game, is that he showed a lot of maturity in that moment. Once he got back into the game, once he kind of, the technical foul happened, he calmed down a bit. He, he just really put it to them in the way that he knows how, and that does show a lot of maturity. That shows that he wasn't mentally taken out of it. It actually helped focus him and fire him up and fire his teammates up, and that was just really cool to see. What happened after that moment for me was just really exciting.
Yeah, it was a crazy moment, that whole sequence, because before he had gotten a foul and he was going to the line, and then he got called for the technical, so they stopped play. Then he had to go back to the line after he was called for the technical, shoot 2, then come back, and then they shot 2, and of course Tulane ended up with the ball. But to your point, I think what we're starting to see is the maturation of the players, right? Green, he's catching fire because they're finding him more on the pass. We're making the extra passes now. When you look at CJ Walker, he's becoming the rim protector. He's got those crazy, insane blocks. And now the team's figuring out, hey, this guy can outleap pretty much anybody in the gym, even if they're 7 feet tall. We can just throw an alley-oop up there close to the rim, and he'll either come down with it and then make a move, or he'll come down with it and dunk the ball. So you have that going on. And then with Adams, what I find is really, really interesting, especially this Tulane game, they were playing a matchup zone, which is very, very difficult to penetrate. In the past, at the beginning of the year, what you saw us do was just pass around the arc and pass around the arc and pass around the arc, and then we had 6 or 7 seconds left to try to score the basket, right? And it was real easy to defend. Now what you see is happening, Adams isn't starting at the three-point line and trying to drive the basket. In that matchup zone, he was hovering right around within 6 to 8 feet of the goal and just standing there, and they were finding him on the pass, and he was just catching and shooting. So it's a completely different game when he's doing that, and I think that's helping him and the team mature as a whole. Perry's been doing well, and I think you're also seeing that in our shooting percentages. We shot 51% against the Cows, and in this last game, we shot 55%, which is absolutely insane. 3-pointers the same way. What can we do now heading into the final 3 games of the season and into the conference tournament to continue to solidify that? Because if you look at it, out of our last 5 games, we've lost 2 by 1 point when we could have won either one of those, and that's it. So this team is coming on strong. What's different, and what can they do to project and propel themselves into the conference tournament?
Yeah, Roger, you just mentioned a lot of things that are different about this team, and you're right. I mean, we're 2 possessions away, essentially, 2 possessions away from talking about a 5-game win streak here for this squad, which obviously would be huge, and it is huge that they're on this roll right now. But you definitely just mentioned some of the things. I think that on offense, they're essentially passing with purpose. They're as you mentioned, when we would go up against a good zone defense or a matchup zone, kind of like Tulane, absolutely what Tulane does well is that kind of confusing junk defense, this matchup zone that they play, where they show you the man-to-man look, and then all of a sudden they switch to the zone even in the middle of a possession, and it can be confusing for teams. And what we were doing in the beginning of the season, kind of towards that middle stretch where we were struggling, is, as you said, we would just kind of pass the ball around the key, and all of a sudden we look up, there's 7 seconds left on the shot clock, and at that moment, what we were doing in the middle of the season when we were struggling is at that moment, whoever had the ball would just say, I'm going to try to take my man one-on-one and just shoot a shot, and eventually it was a crazy shot, or it was a low percentage shot regardless, and it was a lot of one-on-one ball. And what you saw this week, and actually what you've seen really the last 5 games offensively for us, is that they are finding their teammates and they are passing with purpose. What you saw a lot in the Tulane game against that matchup zone is they would swing it around quickly. And then you saw guys like Isaiah Adams, where he would catch the ball on the right wing, take 3 dribbles to the inside, and if he had the shot, pull up for it, which he did make a couple pull-ups in that kind of free throw line area, a couple steps shorter of the free throw line. He definitely made a few of those nice little short jumpers. But if he didn't have it, a lot of times he's driving with purpose, and he had a beautiful kick out to Darius Perry on the left wing that he knocked down for a 3. You saw almost the exact same play with C.J. Walker, where he kind of caught the ball in the short corner there and ripped through, took a couple dribbles and found actually, I think that was Dre Fuller. He took a couple dribbles and he found Isaiah Adams for one of his, I believe he had 4 threes yesterday. I mean, he was 2 for 2 from the 3-point line, excuse me. No, I was right. I'm looking at a bunch of numbers here. 4 for 5 from the 3-point line. So that was one of his 4 threes that he had. So you're seeing not only the drive and kick game that I just mentioned, but also deliberately early in the shot clock, we're making a point, whether it's with CJ, especially because CJ's played the most minutes over the last however many games, but whether it's CJ or Sean Mobley or Jameel Reynolds when he's in for an extended period of time, we're trying to get the ball inside early in the shot clock to try to suck in the defense and be able to kick it out well. All of our big men, for the most part, have the vision to be able to kick it out, whether it's Avery Diggs would be another guy I'd add to that list. And so when you're catching the ball, if you're somebody like Darren Green Jr. especially, if you're catching the ball in front of you, and a guy's closing out, you know he's not going to get there regardless of how hard he's closing out because you got such a quick trigger. I mean, it's just such an easier shot for somebody like Darren Green to make when he's got his feet set and he's catching it. All he has to do is just go straight up with that quick trigger and knock it down. And I think that's what you saw in the first Tulane game that was at home. You certainly saw it yesterday, on the Saturday game against Tulane. You certainly saw that at Tulane, and we sustained their big run that happened after we took the 11-point lead in the second half. We were able to kind of calm down and be able to pull out a 3-point victory, and I think that was our first sweep of any team all year. And so, just really proud of the way this team is starting to come together, and I think that they're going to be, and I'm not saying they're going to go all the way in the conference tournament by any means, but I think that we're positioning ourselves to play really well in the conference tournament and maybe surprise some people and just finish this year strong. That's what I'm looking for. Got 3 games left before that conference tournament starts, and you want all the momentum we can get because, as I've said a million times, we've got the talent to beat anybody on this in this conference. We just got to put it together, and we've certainly put it together for much longer, consistent stretches in the last 5 games than we have all year, really.
You know, you just said something right there that put everything in perspective for me. You said that we've only got 3 games left before the conference tournament. That's crazy. It's gone really fast. It's been an up and down season.
It really has. Yeah, it should have been 4. It should have been 4. Unfortunately, the game at SMU that was supposed to be going on as we were going to be on the radio together on Tuesday, that game was unfortunately had to be canceled because SMU's going through some really big COVID challenges. But yeah, 3 games left. That means that we have 3 games left in the season, which is nuts. Yeah.
Talk about Isaiah Adams and what you've seen from him from the beginning of the season till now.
Well, I mean, certainly he's a freshman, right? So he had an awesome game against FSU when we beat FSU in the beginning of the season, and he certainly started out the season strong, right? He doesn't know what he doesn't know, and so and the other teams don't realize what he brings to the table either, right? So there's not really a scouting report on freshmen when they come in and their tendencies and how they work within the offense. So he was taking advantage of that early on. And I just think that over the middle stretch of the season where he struggled a little bit and kind of fell in and out of the starting lineup, he just, as Dawkins explained it, just kind of, he's had to get used to the college scouting report of like how many multiple looks he's going to get defensively and how different teams are going to guard him every single night, where they're going to throw a lot at him, and things that he hasn't seen before this season, obviously coming in as a freshman. So what you saw on Saturday against Tulane is, I think, just him settling in. I mean, he always exudes that confidence. He always plays with a little bit of swagger, but he was certainly just taking every opportunity to that the defense gave him, and he was taking at it with full force. I mean, for him to hit his first 10 shots of the game, and they weren't all bunnies at the rim. I mentioned on Twitter during the game, that's got to be a UCF record. Going 10 for 10, or at least it's got to be close. And I was confirmed by UCF basketball that he actually tied the record. So now he shares that with 3 other players, including Taco Fall. 10 for 10 is a UCF record. And so just the way he did it, though, I mean, 4 of those were 3-pointers. These little kind of dribble pull-ups that he would do just short of the free throw line and at the elbow. Just really impressive performance. And I think that he's always remained his head in the game on both sides by playing really good defense. And I think that's how he's been able to sustain a good bit of playing time throughout that stretch where he was struggling offensively, is that, you're going to get some playing time in Johnny Dawkins' team if you're playing good defense. And he certainly has done that. But I'm just proud of the way he was able to step up and really come into his own on Saturday's game, where he had a career high 26 points. And hopefully that's a great sign of more to come. And that's just with 4 players in double figures in that Tulane game. I mean, just the more balanced scoring that we can get, I think the more dangerous that we are as a team. The defense is always going to be there. You want to be able to sustain that for 40 minutes, but just, 22 assists is another huge stat for our team to be able to share the ball and play with purpose like that. And Isaiah was really fitting into that system well, and it's really cool to see from the freshman.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about stats, 26 assists to 16 turnovers, that's a big one. We've reduced the turnovers. The game before that, it was even fewer. We're doing a lot better on the boards. And really, in this last game, and I want you to think about this, 42 points off of 3-pointers for this game. Now, that is ridiculous. We were barely scoring 50 or 60 in the first game against Tulane. So we got 42 points off of 3-pointers. And I think that assist number really jumps out as to why that is happening, right? Because in the past, again, we were chucking up threes. They were just contested threes. So, to your point, I think the rhythm and the flow and the extra passes and all of those things are helping. And I think also, I think we found a couple of presences in the paint now. You've got Adams, who's batting cleanup on boards when everybody's out, moving around or at the key waiting for a shot, and Reynolds. So we haven't really seen as much of Reynolds in this game. Is that just a scheme thing, or is he, is Johnny kind of easing him into it because of a conditioning thing?
No, he hasn't shown me any moments where he appeared tired on the court. So I don't think it's necessarily what happened in the game against Tulane, him only playing about just shy of 3 minutes in that game. He did start, but he only played about 3 minutes. I don't think that had really anything to do with conditioning. He didn't get himself in foul trouble because he was out kind of so early. I honestly think, he played 22 minutes in the USF game. He played well, like really well. I mean, he came up with a few huge rebounds, and early on, especially, he had an and one early on. He was kind of imposing his will. He's a guy that's really going to develop into into a key piece for us in our lineup, especially next year. Imagine that guy is 6'10", 285, 18-year-old that has never had imagine him with a full year being able to have access to the college weight program and the weight room. I mean, he's going to be just an absolute beast for us moving forward. So I'm not worried about Jamil. He's showed enough to me anyways to know that his future is bright. And even this season, we're going to see some more contributions from him that'll kind of make our eyebrows raise because he's got a lot of talent and he's a really good player for his class, for his age. But I think in Saturday's game, just playing 3 minutes, I think it was just a result of guys like, Dre and of course Isaiah Adams coming off the bench and just lighting it up. I mean, just playing really good basketball. And even when Avery Diggs was the guy that came in for Jamil Reynolds initially, and he had 2 great hook shots right away, kind of settled us down offensively. He kicked off what became like about a 12-0 run that happened after we had a really horrible start. I think it was like something like we were down at least 10, right initially in the game. It kind of was a very slow start for us. And so I think Avery came in, kind of settled us down, got those 2 points, 2 shots in the paint that went in. And then Isaiah and CJ Walker just kind of took over from there. So I think it was more game flow yesterday for Jamil Reynolds not being in the game. It had nothing to do with, in my opinion, not being in practice or anything. I don't think that there's any type of punishment or any type of lack of conditioning that Dawkins is seeing. I think he just went with the hot hand that we had coming off the bench and Isaiah Adams and others. So he just felt comfortable with the lineup that was in there. And Johnny Dawkins has been known to do that throughout his time at UCF. If he sees things working on the court, he sees the lineup is working, he doesn't want to mess with it regardless of, who's on the bench at that time. And so I think it was just a result of that.
You know that I kind of like to look at the stats and always see one thing really that jumps out at me on the stat page, or I always pick something. Besides the Isaiah Adams 26 points, the biggest thing, and I kind of like to focus on this at times, is the shooting percentage. 60.9 in the second half and 92.3% on free throw attempts in the second half as well.
Yeah, and 61.
I mean, if you just on the 3-point, just look at that second half there.
Second half, yeah. The one you just, the one that you didn't mention there, 61.5% from the 3-point line in the second half. And it wasn't like they, shot 3 or 4 of them and that was it. They went 8 for 13 from the 3-point line in the second half. And I mean, it was kind of a crazy second half overall. I mean, UCF had 48 points. Tulane had 44 points. There was like a stretch about from the 15-minute mark to the 5-minute mark, essentially, where both teams were just lighting it up on offense. The good news is we were handling them on we were guarding the 3-point line really well. They were missing their threes. We were knocking down our threes. And again, I just think all of that with the 22 assists and then those crazy percentage you see offensively in the second half, that's us sharing the ball really well, passing with purpose, and instead of trying to take our man one-on-one, which has been something that we have fallen back into to our detriment at numerous times when we're struggling this year, it just doesn't work for us. We've got some good individual one-on-one players in this team. There's no doubt about that. I mean, Brandon Mahan, Dre Fuller, Darius Perry, even great one-on-one players, but we are going to win as a team if we're looking for our teammates in that drive and kick game. We're getting the ball inside early for the kick out or the easy bucket on the inside, getting to the free throw line, which we were spectacular at yesterday. As you mentioned, 92% in the second half, 87.5% for the game. That's 14 of 16 from the free throw line. That was great too. Just a complete team performance offensively yesterday. I think the Cows game on Wednesday earlier in the week was probably our most complete team performance on both ends of the ball for a full 40 minutes that we've seen out of this team all year. I mean, even going back to the FSU game, the FSU game was a result of Darren Green Jr. knocking down like 6 threes. Isaiah Adams had a great game in that game as well. But then, of course, Brandon Mahan, just a complete, huge individual performance where he just went off for 32 points. That game was a little bit of a result of just guys just going off and winning one-on-one matchups. What we saw this week, especially on the offensive side of the ball, is us playing really well as a team, sharing the ball, and putting their teammates in a great position to win the game and make their shots, and the shots were falling. So hopefully we can keep that up, because with a team as good defensively as we are, things start to click on offense like this, we're real dangerous. I don't care who we're playing. I know that I'm biased, but you've seen some really bright spots here for this team, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, man, and poor Tulane. Those guys were shooting 67%, I think, from the free throw line, and that really hurt them. But then again, not poor Tulane, because I was a little irritated with Ron Hunter on that last potential technical there at the end, where he was talking about people pointing at his bench.
Yeah, that was a really strange sequence, what happened at the end there. I mean, C.J. Walker gets that amazing block and just basically saves the game for us. And then they stopped the game for a long time. I don't even know what they were really reviewing, because if they didn't hear what CJ said, they're not going to call a technical through the replay. And so it's just a very strange sequence that they even stopped and looked at things. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Ron Hunter, he tried his best to try to get something there for his team, and didn't like whatever happened or whatever he perceived to happen. But yeah, it was a weird way to end the game, but thank God we came up with the victory.
Alrighty, Ben, as you know, this is episode 250 of the Knightline podcast. I want to thank you for being a part of a lot of it. I don't remember exactly the first one you were on and all that. I'm sure I can look it up. But I appreciate you, and now you're part of the radio show as well every week, and I appreciate all that you've given us and all that you've done for Knightline. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Andrew, and I definitely wanted to take a moment to say that congratulations on 250. I mean, I think you've just done a spectacular job of not only expanding the conversation, but just really bringing content to Knight Nation over the last however many years you've been doing it. I think it's your 6th season doing this, or 6th year doing this, I believe. But 250 is a huge number. I don't care what the podcast is about. And so I'm really happy for you, and congratulations. And I'm really appreciative and grateful that you've allowed me to be a part of it. I have a blast being on with you guys on the podcast, and certainly being on with you guys on the radio show on Tuesday nights. It's been fun it's been great to be kind of a small part of this awesome journey that you've taken us all on, and I'm looking forward to many more to come.
Thank you. Your check's in the mail.
No, I absolutely mean that, and you know that. So I appreciate everything that you've kind of the platform that you've given me, and really the platform that you've given all of UCF. You've helped expand the UCF brand and
your
the
bonus
knowledge
check
of
is in the
UCF
mail
more
as
than you know.
Wow.
You just keep
regardless.
adding to that bonus.
Well,
So
regardless,
ESPN's now paying him. We're paying him too.
I know.
I mean it, man.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
My goal was to try to make you tear up a little bit. You joked your way through it, so I didn't get a chance to really lay it on thick. But it's all good.
It's all good, man. Thank you.
250,
really,
man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's been a long road, but we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep going.
Right. We're going to keep it going.
And yeah, there's many more to come. As long as, there's many more to come. I think about it a lot, and I just, I don't know. You don't know how long to keep going. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sometimes it just gets, it takes time, for sure.
The amount of commitment
life
that it takes
and everything else. So,
yep.
But we're not going anywhere, at least for a while. So, thank you.
All
very
right, man.
much.
Well, many more to come. Yeah, thank you, and you guys have a great rest of the show. And as always, thanks for having me on.
All right, we'll talk to you Tuesday night.
All right, talk to you then. Take it easy.
Ask a Knightline is brought to you by Chad Barr Law. Chad is a UCF alumnus and diehard Knights fan. Chad Barr Law handles auto accident, slip and fall, and personal injury cases. Call Chad today at 407-599-9036 for a free consultation. That's 407-599-9036. Armor up and call Chad Barr Law today. All right, time again for Ask Knightline, where we're answering your questions you posted on our Facebook page or via Twitter at Ask Knightline, hashtag Ask Knightline. It's usually Twitter, by the way. At UCF, Selena asks, I asked this 3 years ago, but want to ask it again. Has the Twitter Mafia gotten out of control, or are they just thrilled to have such a passion, or are we just thrilled to have such a passionate fan base? At times, the UCF Twitter Mafia can get a little crazy. I think that we talked about it earlier. I think everybody really came around, though, to this Gus Malzahn thing, and I think everybody is extremely excited. I'm really happy 98.7% of the time to have the loud mouths and the keyboard clicking Twitter Mafia. I am. Sometimes, obviously, it can get a little out of hand, but most of the time, I think it's absolutely awesome. So I think they need to go strong, and we're going to get a lot more interest, a lot more eyes on us in the next couple of, or at least this season, especially with Gus Malzahn being here. So everybody's gotta get their fingers exercised and their typing, swords sharpened, because this is going to be important for us to handle this appropriately, I will say.
Well, Andrew, for me, as proudly part of that Twitter Mafia, I think I can pass judgment on it from within. But at the end of the day, let me just put it to you this way.
I'm part of it as well, obviously. So
yeah, exactly. But the way I look at it is this, right? The Twitter Mafia has done three things for us. We are, it's funny even just to say that way. We are top 25, okay, in social media presence, okay? We're talking about schools. We're in with schools like Stanford and Notre Dame and all of these different schools that are blue blood programs, right? And those fan bases and having that kind of support and making that level of noise is what gets us noticed and separates us from all those others. And
sometimes positively, sometimes negatively, though.
But that's just the sign of a big-time program. Look at Auburn. Look at Alabama. Look at Georgia. Look at the jorts wearing Florida fans. You know what I mean? And there's a distinction there, right? But those T-shirt warriors at Walmart that are Florida fans that are all over there too. So every large fan base has that group of people, and they're going to be controversial, right? There are some people that just I mean, you should be backing away from the keyboard and not saying some of the things you're saying. But at the end of the day, by and large, it is a very positive thing because if anything else, it demonstrates that we have a large enough fan base and an engaged fan base, because it's one thing to have a bunch of alumni. It's another thing to have a bunch of people that don't do anything or are not engaged with a particular school. Look at Duke. For an example of that. They've been around forever. They've got a great basketball brand. They've been a quote-unquote blue blood in basketball, but their football has hardly any support, whereas we have a very loud and boisterous brand and group of people that are willing to extol the virtues of it. Look no further than Eric DeSalvo and his success within the social media space and being recognized year after year as a top executive in social media. He constantly gets awards for this. And do you know why? It's because he's engaged fans and whipped them into a fervor. And most of the time they're educated and espousing the right values. So yes, it drives chains. Yes, it makes a difference. You have the talking heads on national TV. They're constantly talking about us during the undefeated seasons. Why is that? Is because we're loud and we're making noise. And when they're talking about it on their social media outlets or on TV, you heard Game Day talking about it. That's a positive net influence for us. So it does make a difference. And yes, I am happy that they exist and that they are so passionate. There are a few that just need to take a step back from the ledge because they forget that there are people on the other end of the social media profiles.
Okay, on to the next question. Phil Talk Sports, at Phil Talk Sports, what former Knight would you most like to see on the coaching staff? I don't think that it's going to happen, personally. I just don't think that there's going to be a big one on this one. It's filling out really quickly. And I think that most of it is going to be people that Gus Malzahn knows and Terry Mohajir knows. I don't know if it's priority for them to have a UCF former player on there. I wish that it was. One of the guys that I would like to see on it is Kyle Israel, to be honest with you. I think Kyle Israel could do this team a lot of good with some of the things that he has going on. As even an analyst or an assistant or something. So that's my guy, personally. I would also say Kevin Smith, obviously, but that's not going to happen this year. Those are the two guys that I would really like to see involved in the program.
Well, if we're just saying in general or active, actual possibilities, I mean, Kevin Smith was the one that everybody was floating around because he's done well. He's a UCF supporter and alumnus, and he is someone that would have been positioned to come here and help us win at this time in his career. There's Tyler Hinshaw, who's also been a big supporter. He was most recently at Kentucky. He was available as a quarterbacks coach. I would have liked to seen him. If we're just saying in general, who would we like to see? I would have liked to see Dante a little bit more involved in the program and working with quarterbacks, or Asante Samuel working with our DBs, but they're not in the coaching stratosphere right now. So of the coaches that are available that are out there working, I think Kevin Smith would have been my number one, and then Hinshaw would have been my number two.
Okay. All right, next question at Black and Gold Ed, or Ed, I'm not sure which one it is. I say this every time. Maybe he'll explain his Twitter name.
Tweet us.
I don't know if it means education or Ed. I'm not sure. Gus is making lots of offers to 4-star recruits. Do you think he can land some? Well, I think from our conversation earlier that we've been having, absolutely, and I think that we will. 4 stars, I mean, they're obviously hard to get sometimes, but I don't think they're really going to be that hard to get anymore. I think it's going to be a lot easier. It's the 5 stars that I want to see, like I was saying earlier.
Well, look at UCF's own past. When we had David Kelly here, we were grabbing 4 stars before, multiples, right? So do I think we can do that again with a coaching staff under Gus Malzahn and some of the people he's putting together, and the one person that doesn't have Auburn ties that he's bringing in? actually is a big-time legend on par, or if not more so, than what Randy Shannon is. So he's going to be a running backs guy. And, he was the head coach at Miami, Booker T. Washington, down in Miami. So when you're starting to bring that type of power, putting Gus's name behind that, and then on top of that, have the ability and the energy to go out and sell your offense and a coaching staff behind it, and then UCF in general, I 100% expect, I expect, given our past, to be able to pull 4-star players with that kind of weaponry.
Absolutely. All right, Brian W. Peterson, who will take the bigger leap in improvement during the 2021 season, the offense or the defense? Well, I don't know how much you can really our offense hasn't been perfect, but it's been pretty dang good. I think the one easily for me that would take the biggest step, that needs to take the biggest step, will be the defense. I think a lot needs to be done in that situation, and I think that it will. It's going to be a new scheme, and Gus Malzahn has said, and he said it in his press conference, that defense is extremely important, and we will be just as good of a defense as we are an offense. And that has not been, the MO for a while. Our defense, yes, had its flashes of glory last year and the last couple of years, but I think it can be a lot better. Especially, we don't want to remember, but we have to remember what happened to the defense against BYU in the bowl game. So using that as our measuring stick, it can get a heck of a lot better, and I believe that it will.
I agree with that take wholeheartedly. I think the defense has the biggest ability to increase. I think the offense, they have some efficiency numbers that they can get better at. But as far as yards and touchdowns, it's hard to beat what they were doing. I think defensively, the big thing, linebackers have a lot of opportunity. We brought some guys in last year that I think Quade Mosier, and there was another kid, I can't remember his name right now, but they're going to help us big time. I think the defensive line needs some help. And I think the defensive backs, if you look at there, most of them were freshmen. So they're going to get another year of reps, so they're going to tighten up and going to be better. And you got to remember that senior leadership that we had, with the exception of Richie Grant and Aaron Robinson, towards the end of the year last year, was gone. For various reasons. Some of them were COVID related. Some of them, the guys got kicked off the team. So I do think they have the biggest leap. We will play nickel and dime packages again. He's already said that. So, and he prefers a 4-down lineman. So it'll be interesting to see what it's going to be. But I 100% absolutely think that the defense will play better than what it did, especially towards the end of the last year.
All right. Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's going to about wrap it up for us. We had a bunch more stuff, but we don't want to make this too horribly long. So let's wrap it there. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you very much for listening to us throughout these 250 episodes. I still can't believe that we're there. So this has been Knightline 250. I'm Andrew Phegley.
And I'm Roger Phipps. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Our spirits will never yield. Black